Westwood One Sports presents to you the most unique show in sports.
I'm going to say something now that some may take as a hot take, and I don't really care because I know that I'm right.
A show so staggeringly awesome and unapologetically original, you won't know what hit you.
Do you ever just get down on your knees and thank God that you know me and have access to my dementia?
Featuring the man himself, Nick Kostos.
For anyone else who says, oh, he's exaggerating, he's prisoner of the moment. First off, shut up. This is the National Football League. This is not the Big 12. It's not Pop Warner. An absolute disgrace. An atrocity. An affront. One of the most disgraceful performances that I have ever seen in 35 years watching National Football League football.
This is You Better You Bet, presented by BetMGM on Westwood One Sports.
What's up, everybody? Happy and merry. Terrific Football Tuesday to you and yours. This is You Better You Bet with Nick Kostos on Westwood One Sports. As we bring you the fastest show in all of sports. The show presented today and always by BetMGM. Make it legendary by downloading the BetMGM app and visiting BetMGM.com. And on this Tuesday morning, the world of sports is alive. I say that like Newman says jambalaya in the Soup Nazi episode of Seinfeld. I guess it's a nod to Wayne Knight. Anyway, we're going to get to all the big stories today from the world of sports because the world of sports, as I just said, jambalaya, including a spin on the NFL coaching carousel as we have two more vacancies filled in the National Football League. Jeff Hafley, the new head coach of the Miami Dolphins. Robert Saleh, the new head coach of the Tennessee Titans. I'm going to break down both hires. I like one way more than the other, and I'll tell you which one that I prefer of the two. And the side note here, the side story of all of this, that I think might play a role in next year's Super Bowl champion. An underreported story, in my estimation, coming out of these two hires that could play a role into who wins next year's Super Bowl. You might be asking yourself, Nick, what the hell are you talking about? Oh, I'm going to make it make sense coming up later in the show. Also, I used to, when you're a kid, your parents take you to the movies, and sometimes you go to see movies you don't want to see. I remember I was like, 96 maybe, I'm 13. My parents took me to see While You Were Sleeping, like the romantic comedy with like Sandra Bullock and one of the guys from the OC. Anyway, while we were all sleeping last night, Jimmy Butler tore his ACL for the Golden State Warriors, and that news was confirmed by Shams Charania of ESPN about 4 or 5 hours ago in real time in the middle of the night. And I think for Golden State, the Warriors are going to be big time up against it. There is a potential way out for the Warriors to contend this season. I will share that with everybody coming up later in the show. And on this terrific Football Tuesday edition of You Better You Bet, 4 phenomenal guests will join us. Danny Parkins, first things first on Fox Sports 1, weekdays 5 to 6 p.m. Eastern. Later this hour to talk about his Chicago Bears losing on Sunday night to the Rams, Championship Sunday in the NFL, and, of course, last night's national championship game. Speaking of the national championship game, you want an A-plus interview the morning after the national championship game? We've got it for you. Greg McElroy, who called the game last night with Sean McDonough on ESPN Radio. Greg McElroy, we taped the interview a couple hours ago, and I'll tell that story at the top of next hour. Greg is the best. We taped an interview with Greg McElroy that will play at 10 a.m. Eastern time that you will not want to miss, especially if you are a fan of Indiana and a fan of the Las Vegas Raiders. Connor Rohr of Sports Illustrated coming up in the final hour of the show. Connor has been all over the NFL coaching carousel. We'll get his opinions on Robert Saleh, his opinions on Jeff Hafley, and what's going to happen with the rest of these vacancies, including in Buffalo with the Bills. And Carrington Harrison, who is the afternoon host, the afternoon drive host of the Odyssey Sports radio station in Kansas City. Carrington Harrison joins us in the final hour to talk about Eric sleeping with Bieniemy. Going to be back as the new offensive coordinator of the Chiefs. He hates that hire, and he's going to explain why it matters at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. All my bets for tonight will close the show as per usual. Listen, the under last night, no fun in the national championship game. Under 47.5, 48 points scored. 2-1 in the NBA. Hit some props thanks to Joey Knish, who joined us yesterday on the Charlie Becker receiving yards over. So we will give you bets for tonight to close the show. And I got a bunch of games I like in both the NBA and college basketball that I can't wait to share with you, our listeners, you, our viewers. 310-840-4910 is the number, 310-840-4910. And shout out to everybody in the YouTube chat. I'll be in there during the next break. Watch us on YouTube, youtube.com/@thekostos, THEKOSTOS. But we officially begin the terrific Football Tuesday edition of You Better You Bet with history.
He's going to take off and run. Mendoza weaves his way first and goal, diving toward the end zone. Touchdown!
Oh, baby. Chris Fowler with the call last night on ESPN and ABC. Fernando Mendoza. As soon as Mendoza gets into the end zone there, the first thing I'm thinking is Gus Johnson during the Penn State game. Listen, I'm sick with this stuff, right? I don't know how many people are thinking about Gus Johnson in that moment, but I'm thinking about Gus Johnson with Mendoza with the touchdown pass to Omar Cooper to beat the Nittany Lions in the closing moments in Happy Valley. Give him the Heisman Trophy. And yes, Fernando Mendoza had already won the Heisman Trophy by the time last night's game started. But that was the moment, the Heisman moment, the national championship moment for Indiana. And obviously, Indiana would have to hold on for dear life at the end of the game and get a Jamari Sharp interception of Carson Beck in the final minute with Miami with the chance to win, to clinch a national championship for the Indiana Hoosiers. Not in basketball, in football. And there is going to be a lot of what some people will deem hyperbole coming your way here today, specifically today, but also over the rest of the week and in the summer leading up to next year's college football season. There are some people, these are the type of people that hate puppies and hate pizza. These are negative human beings that want to rain on everybody's parade. And like the type of people that, well, actually, let me tell you why this isn't good or why you're wrong about this or this isn't fun. And I hope that you, the listener, and you, the viewer, I'm talking directly to you, that you don't get caught in this trap of negativity. What Nick Saban once deemed the rat poison, except instead of rat poison getting in the minds of players, rat poison gets in the mind of you, the sports fan. Because there will be people that will say, oh, it's exaggeration. It's hyperbole. You're prisoner of the moment if you want to say that this is the greatest turnaround, forget about college football, in the history of sports. The greatest coaching job in the history of sports. And the most improbable champion in the history of sports. Now, there are soccer fans out there, I'm sure, who will say, well, what about Leicester City? Good argument. I'm saying the major North American sports. You want to argue Leicester City? I certainly understand that, winning the Premier League in 2015. But as far as anybody else goes, I don't want to hear it. It's not hyperbole. It's not exaggeration. It's not prisoner of the moment. For Indiana winning the national championship in football to be deemed one of the greatest stories, the greatest turnaround, and I'll say it, the greatest coaching job in the history of sports, what Curt Cignetti was able to do at Indiana. And there's symmetry and there's beauty in all of it. 50 years ago, 1976, Bobby Knight leads Indiana to an undefeated season in college basketball and a national championship. And in 2026, Curt Cignetti leads the Indiana football team to an undefeated season and a national championship. And even in this moment right now, We all watched the game play. It's like I reference the scene sometimes from The Matrix just because I think it's so apropos for so many different things. Joe Pantoliano, who turns heel in the movie, right? He turns against the humans and he turns to the side of the agents, right? And he's eating that steak and he's drinking the red wine at dinner with an agent in The Matrix. And he goes, I know this isn't real, but he's eating it, right? I feel like we all watched it happen last night, and I still feel like it's not real, that this actually happened, that Indiana won the national championship. And sometimes I say here on the show, if you're a sports fan of a certain age, and when I say that, I mean like in my age group, like I'm turned 43 later this year, then you could really understand the significance of some things. You don't have to be my age to get this. You could be 10, 15, 20 years younger than me and understand that Indiana has sucked forever in football and been a doormat forever in football and an afterthought forever in football. And today, champions. National champions. I've used the analogy to describe Curt Cignetti, Walter White from Breaking Bad, coming out of nowhere, becoming the kingpin basically overnight. Except in Breaking Bad, Walter White's like a monster and he's really evil and his story ends poorly because he's a terrible human being. Curt Cignetti's got a happy ending. He won and he did it the right way. And they're loaded for bear. And they're one of the favorites to win next year's national championship. And we'll get to the odds market for next year's national championship coming up later this hour. And it should surprise nobody. And I will try to be as positive as possible regarding Miami and Mario Cristobal. Curt Cignetti outcoached Mario Cristobal last night. Like, there's no way around it. And I don't want to turn this into a negative Mario Cristobal thing because Miami could have won the national championship last night. This was not the Peach Bowl. This was not the Rose Bowl. This game was close. Hell, Miami covered the spread. And in the words of some, like YouTube commenter Curtis Johnson, good teams win and great teams cover. And Indiana might be the national champions. But last night, from a betting perspective, they were merely good. While the Miami Hurricanes, of course, were great. But it should surprise no one that Curt Cignetti outcoached Mario Cristobal in the game last night. And what is so incredibly interesting about that, the coaching matchup, Cignetti v. Cristobal, and incredibly interesting and fascinating about last night's game, is that this wasn't the Rose Bowl. And it wasn't the Peach Bowl. And it wasn't Big Ten conference play from this season, or the vast majority of games, the Big Ten title game, or the vast majority of games Indiana's played this season, where not many of those games were close. You had the Penn State game, the Big Ten championship game against Ohio State, and last night. This was not one of the games where Indiana shows up and just nukes the competition, destroys Alabama in the Rose Bowl, pick six of Dante Moore on the first play of the Peach Bowl. This game legitimately could have gone either way. Miami absolutely could have won this game. And I think that provides a great prism with which to view this Indiana season. A team capable of winning and beating you in many different ways. Beating you in blowout fashion, and then doing all the little things necessary to win a national championship. Where this game, by and large, comes down to a couple big plays. The block punt touchdown in the third quarter, like the 17 insane catches by Charlie Becker, and a couple fourth down conversions and third down conversions by Indiana, including the piece of sound that Kenny played for you, the play of the game, the play of the season in college football, where Curt Cignetti, on that drive, by the way, where Indiana scores that touchdown to take a 10-point lead, to go up 24-14, where multiple fourth downs, and you were always going for the first one. You're in no man's land at the Miami 37, and Cignetti's kind of hemming and hawing a little bit, calls a timeout. You get the first down conversion to Becker. And then he's contemplating kicking a field goal to go up 6, calls timeout, sends the offense back onto the field. Brilliant call on the Mendoza draw, on the Mendoza run. And Mendoza, like, this felt like, and this is hyperbole, and I will admit that. This was like John Elway in the Super Bowl against the Green Bay Packers, and like Elway didn't score on the whirly bird play, but it kind of felt like that. Where this felt like the college equivalent of Josh Allen lowering his shoulder and getting into the end zone. The high leverage plays went the way of the Indiana Hoosiers. And a case can certainly be made, and this is why it's so tough for Miami, right? That if a couple of these plays go differently. The punt isn't blocked. No, one of the fourth down conversions doesn't happen. Mendoza gets tackled. Becker doesn't catch the ball. We could be having this conversation today, and Miami are the national champions. Miami, to credit the Hurricanes, kept getting punched in the mouth by Indiana and kept getting up off the mat. And you saw the NFL talent all over the field for the Miami Hurricanes. Whether it's Reuben Bain rushing the passer, whether it's Mark Fletcher toting the rock, whether it's Malachi Toney catching the ball and looking like he needs to be playing in the NFL immediately. He's ridiculously good. That was a stellar, it ended in a loss, a stellar effort from Miami. And people will point to the Carson Beck, and it's a terrible throw at the end of the game that gets picked off. It's not a good throw, not a good decision by Carson Beck. Forced that ball, obviously. And I've criticized Carson Beck in the past. Let's be really honest. Without Carson Beck, Miami is not in the spot that Miami's in last night. Where Miami loses those 2 regular season games, everyone leaves them for dead, and they go on this absolute tour of destruction, annihilating teams to get into position to make the playoff. And Carson Beck's a big part of that. And his coaches and his teammates praised him lavishly after the game for his leadership. And he was good in last night's game. I don't know if he was great in last night's game, but he was good. Good enough to win. Fernando Mendoza wasn't great in last night's game. Mendoza made big plays when it mattered the most, but this was a game that was very much in the balance and could have gone either way. And in the end, it sucks to say, for Miami, and if you're a Miami bettor, and future's better, if you bet Miami in the game last night, you won, that in the big spots and the high leverage moments, Indiana executed, and Cignetti made the right calls, and Mario Cristobal didn't. Specifically, and I don't want to turn this into an anti-Cristobal thing because he did an incredible job this season. They almost won the national championship. But at what point, 4th and 2 at the end of the first half, and you settle for a 50-yard field goal that the kicker doinks off, the Carter Davis doinks off the upright? How do you not go for that? How have you not learned your lesson yet with things like this? 50-yard field goal. You're the underdog in the game. If you're gonna kick, go for it and try and get closer. I hated that decision for Mario Cristobal. And they still could have won the game on the final drive, but hey, you probably would have liked it if it went a little differently. So this was a game, again, where Indiana did the things that Indiana needed to do to win, and Miami just comes up a little bit short. My last note on Curt Cignetti in Indiana for this segment, we'll talk about Fernando Mendoza on the other side. I'm far from the only person to say this, right? And I think if you've ever played the NCAA football video game, right, which came back a couple years ago, I'm old and I have a kid, and I wish, this is not me saying, hey, video games are for young people, you whippersnappers, you losers. I wish that I could sit down and play. I want nothing more than to just play, hit my pen and play video games, as opposed to be stone cold sober all the time and work and take care of my daughter all the time. I wish that I could still do that. So I don't know when the NCAA video game came back, but I played it when I was growing up, high school, college. I loved it. I played the bleep out of it. I had a buddy, my buddy Carl, shout out to him, who used to spend 3 days straight after the game came out manually inputting all the real player names into the game. We absolutely loved it. So I'm far from the only person to have this thought. Curt Cignetti just did in real life what we have all done, or a lot of us have done, the listeners and viewers, you who have done this playing the game, in NCAA football. Why do you want to take over Alabama and win the title with Alabama? No. You want to win the national championship with Indiana. You want to win the national championship with Air Force, with Minnesota, with Virginia, with Oregon State. Insert moribund, downtrodden franchise. That's what you want to try and do. Curt Cignetti did this in real life. And how incredible is that? Just the greatest coaching job ever. Ever. In the history of sports. And as far as the sport of college football goes, I said this yesterday, right? A lot of people bitch and moan about a lot of things with college football. And I bitched and moaned yesterday I was a bitcher and a moaner and a whiner and a complainer yesterday that the game was played on, and I still think that. Game should not have been last night. Needed more attention on it, and obviously everyone watched the game, but like, everyone's talking about the NFL divisional round. College football is not without its warts, right? It's not perfect in the same way that nothing and no one is. I think this college football season is one of the best ones, if not the best one in my lifetime. I am obsessed with the fact that we got a college basketball style Final Four. And just consider this for a moment, right? Let's say that we were still at a 4-team playoff. The 4-team playoff would have been Texas Tech, Indiana, Georgia, and Ohio State. And how much that sucks, knowing what we know now in retrospect, and how much better it is that we got what we got. I love the playoff. I love that the NIL era, and I'm not saying it's perfect, but it's evened the playing field where you can get a team like Indiana to win the national championship. Texas Tech can make the college football playoff and get a bye and win the Big 12. I think this is amazing. So yes, we all complain, and there are things worth complaining about. But I think it's important today, with the sport having ended for this season and not returning in our lives until Labor Day, to take a moment and say, this season ruled. And this sport, college football, is absolutely amazing. Speaking of absolutely amazing, on the other side, we will get to Indiana's quarterback, Fernando Mendoza, the presumptive number 1 overall pick in the NFL draft. And I'm going to tell all of you why I am convinced that he is ready to be a Las Vegas Raider. Coming up next, You Better You Bet, Westwood One Sports with me, Nick Kostos, presented by BetMGM.
want to give all the glory to God. And I mean, there's no better group of guys I want to do it with. It's the most special moment of my life. There's such a great group of guys. I love you guys. Great job. Let's go!
Now, back to You Better You Bet with Nick Kostos on Westwood One Sports.
Oh, Kenny Henderson is absolutely the best. For the uninitiated, leave it underneath me for a second here. This is the official theme song of the Las Vegas Raiders. Yeah, bring it up for a second. Yeah. Oh, baby. The autumn wind is a raider, pillaging just for fun. He'll knock you around and upside down and laugh when he's conquered and won. That was the voice of Indiana quarterback Fernando Mendoza postgame coming back from break. Get your tinfoil hats on, everybody. I'm about to, conspiracy theorize here, and I'm admitting that right off the top. I can be way wrong about it. And it's what's so funny about this. I swear by the moon and the stars in the sky. I swear on my daughter, I hadn't even considered saying what I'm about to say about Cignetti. I'll do that in a second. But as far as Fernando Mendoza is concerned, here's the NFL tie-in. So the Raiders have the number 1 pick, right? Tom Brady's at the game last night in a Raiders hoodie with general manager John Spytek. And obviously, people think they're going to draft Mendoza first overall, and that's why Brady's there, and Spytek's there to watch Fernando Mendoza. Now, I've described Fernando Mendoza as being the ChatGPT quarterback. He is like if you said to AI, to ChatGPT, to Gemini, whatever, hey, create a quarterback for me who says and does all the right things, who gives the glory and honor to God after every game, who constantly praises his teammates and his coaches, who wins the Heisman Trophy and talks about how much his mother means to him. Fernando Mendoza is the ChatGPT quarterback. So it goes noted then that post-game, after winning the national championship, he's on stage being interviewed with millions of people watching, and he knows that, and he drops not only a hard F-bomb on national television, but he gives you Tom Brady's exact catchphrase when Brady played. The title of Tom Brady's podcast, Let's Effing Go. Except instead of effing, he said the real thing. Does anyone think that happened by accident? That Mendoza, who's as curated and careful as it gets, who is a public relations person's dream. You never have to worry about Mendoza saying the wrong thing, doing the wrong thing. And all of a sudden, he just drops an F-bomb on national television with Tom Brady in attendance, with the Raiders having the number 1 overall pick, and it's let's effing go, Tom Brady's line. It's possible that it's coincidence. And I have to be honest about that. It could just be coincidence. Or maybe I'm onto something here. And the other thing here, and I hadn't even considered this. I actually thought it last night in the moment, and for some reason, I didn't draw the corollary until Kenny played the Raiders theme song coming back from break. We have to get this. So this is what we need for Kenny's Corner later. We need Al Davis after the Raiders beat the Redskins in Super Bowl 18 when he's on set with Brent Musburger. And Musburger asks him about the feud with Pete Rozelle and how he can keep the Raiders, he can keep them all locked in. And Al Davis says, and I'm paraphrasing here the quote, it's one of the legendary quotes in the history of sports. He goes, the first thing you have to do is get the best coaches and the best organization. And then you get the best players. And you tell them one thing. Just win, baby. And the media goes nuts. And the players go nuts for Al Davis. Curt Cignetti kind of said something a little bit similar in the postgame on the podium. I am tinfoil hatting this. I know that. I understand that I may be reading way too far into it. I can be way wrong here. And Cignetti would never even entertain being the coach of the Raiders. I get it. I'm just saying, though, Mendoza, let's effing go. That's Brady's line. Brady's there. The Raiders have the number 1 overall pick. And I think we need to play those two pieces of sound back to back. Now, Cignetti didn't do just win, baby. It wasn't the same thing, but he basically said something to the extent of, Like, you get the best organization, you get the best coaches, and you get really good players. And I'm watching it thinking, he's doing Al Davis here after Super Bowl 18. Is it a conspiracy theory? Probably. I'm probably wrong. But it's really fun to think about, ain't it? Sean McDonough joined us last week on the show and said, if the Raiders don't take Fernando Mendoza, they should disband the franchise. Who among us would dare disagree after what we saw last night? On the other side, the first of our 4 phenomenal guests will join, the great Danny Parkins from First Things First on Fox Sports 1, talking Bears, Championship Sunday, and your national champion, Indiana Hoosiers, here on Westwood One Sports.
Now, back to You Better You Bet with Nick Kostos and the crew. Presented by BetMGM on Westwood One Sports.
It's an unbelievable call from the great Mike Tirico and Chris Collinsworth on Sunday Night Football. Now, our engineer, Kenny Henderson, is a big Bears fan, Chicago guy. I think he thinks that he's doing something nice by playing that touchdown. Danny Parkins is going to join us in just a second. Celebrity Bears fan, first things first on Fox Sports 1. I'm watching Danny in what's called Q, so I can see Danny before we bring him on the air, and I can see in Danny's face, he looks like a Mets fan whenever you bring up the N.D. Chavez catch in Game 7 against the Cardinals in the '06 NLCS. Maybe a play lost to history. Danny will join us in just a second. We got to tell you about our show sponsor, BetMGM. BetMGM account holders will receive an Any Sport Parlay Boost token. Score a bigger payout if your wager with the Parlay Boost token hits. Tokens can be used on parlays and same-game parlays. Download the BetMGM app today. The aforementioned Danny Parkins joins us on the show in his weekly spot at Danny Parkins on Twitter, at Danny Parkins1 on Instagram. How are you, my friend?
I'm great. I'm happy to always talk about that Caleb throw and that touchdown to Cole Kmet. It is not a sad memory. I do not think it will be lost to history, but the emotion that you registered on my face when that played was I hadn't thought about the Bears loss in about 6 minutes. And so, which was the longest stretch of time I had gone since the game. And so it then just came crashing back. And you would think that I would have primed myself because I'm getting ready to do this interview radio spot with you. But we were talking offline about the national championship game from last night. So my brain just wasn't on the Bears for some dumb reason. And so, yeah, the play is a very happy memory. The game, very much not.
Yeah, can you put it in, you're so good at this. Put it all in perspective for us, right? It could be the season, the game, whatever, as it concerns the 25 Chicago Bears.
So the game is so frustrating because I thought they had it. And I actually thought that they outplayed them. And you can say that there's some bias there, but I totally in the moment supported them not going for two because of how well their defense had been playing, being at home, Loveland being out, their struggle in short yardage. I was like, extending the game is in the Bears' favor because they had outplayed the Rams. I was totally fine with that decision in the moment. And so, going 1 of 4 on 4th and 1, also missing some 3rd and 1s, the Adunze drop on the first drive, the DJ Moore, whatever the hell that was on the last interception. Yeah, someone with the team told me that he thought it was more of a confusion with the coverage, which made him slow up out of confusion than effort. But either way, it's bad. And then him skipping out afterwards and not being available the next day to talk about it to just let us wonder is not a good look, obviously. So it felt like that was there, and that's really frustrating. But then period, next paragraph, it's the most enjoyable Bears season of my life, including 06 when they went to the Super Bowl, because at the beginning of the year, I said bust was off the table with Caleb Williams, but I was getting a ton of pushback from that. And Drake May had looked better in his rookie year. Jaden Daniels obviously had looked better. And the Bears, we thought Ben Johnson was going to be a great coach, but you never know until you see him in the big seat. And so the fact that you've solved coach and quarterback in one season, plus all of the highlights, plus the memories, plus the win over Green Bay in the playoff game. And it's not even just that you have a great coach and a great quarterback, but at the end of the season, Caleb Williams is wearing Ben Johnson's high school jersey to a game. So they are just in total synergy, which I thought was a dumb storyline, but there was some question about whether or not they really got along. And even Caleb spoke to, he was I don't know if this guy really likes me, as they were feeling it out. So just the idea that they have arguably the most physically talented quarterback in the league with one of the 5 great offensive minds in the league, both young, Ben Johnson, 39, Caleb Williams, 23, 24, it feels like a coach quarterback pairing that the league is going to have to reckon with for a decade. And so that part is just so wildly exciting and unprecedented for Chicago Bears fans that I have no problem calling the season an A+, even if the Rams game was a massive disappointment.
I agree with you completely. And I'll say this about Caleb, and I got a lot of pushback from people. I can't believe it. because people are box score monkeys, right? Oh, they threw 3 interceptions. Ugh, I don't know. I watched the game. I thought Caleb outplayed Matthew Stafford in the game. And I mean that not as an insult to Matthew Stafford. I think it's a compliment to Caleb Williams. And my experience with the game, and I'm curious where you land on Caleb, because I'm going to say some stuff that you may think is hyperbolic right now. It felt like to me watching the game, and I actually have like goosebumps right now thinking about it. Like, been watching the NFL for almost 40 years. It felt like to me in the fourth quarter and in overtime, and obviously the interception, we could, whatever, with DJ Moore kind of loafing on the play. This felt like the scene in Swingers where Vince Vaughn says to Jon Favreau, like, my baby boy is all grown up. Like, he actually, like, took the next step. And in that moment, I'm thinking, this guy's going to win an MVP at some point. Like, he's here. Now, that doesn't mean he's perfect, like, has a lot to work on, and you would anticipate that happens over the course of this offseason. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. But you really saw for the first time, and I've been reticent to make a statement like this, I think he's going to be one of the guys. I don't even know what the argument against it is now, other than someone being a hater. Am I exaggerating being prisoner of the moment here as it concerns Caleb Williams?
No, I mean, I said on First Things First yesterday that it feels inevitable that Caleb Williams will be both an MVP and a Super Bowl champion. Like, I think the talent is so undeniable. And a couple of things. He just gets eliminated against the Rams. Heartbreaking loss. He does like an 8.5-minute post-game press conference. Legitimately, like 4.5 minutes into it, he was talking about this offseason, how he knows that he needed to work on his footwork and his accuracy, and he was going to be getting all of the receivers together. Now, you hear that stuff all the time about getting the receivers together to work in the offseason, but it's normally like a day after, like a post-mortem thing. He knows what he needs to work on. The idea that a guy who is that talented with a coach who is this good is not going to be able to get his completion percentage from like 59% to 65% is just so laughable. Like, we know he physically can do it. He did it in college. He had a sack rate last year of double-digit percent. He took 68 sacks. This year, he took less than 30. Then at the beginning of the year, it was like, oh my God, is Caleb Williams able to like verbalize the complicated play calls? Are they gonna lead the league in pre-snap penalties? He eliminated that. Like, the things that are his weaknesses, he has already attacked and improved immensely in year 1 of Ben Johnson, year 2 in the league. So now the thing that everybody knows, he needs to be more efficient and he needs to hit his layups at a higher clip. That's what he's going to attack this offseason while he masters the offense. You'd be a fool to think that a guy with those physical gifts would not be able to do it. Now, separate thought, is he ever going to lead the league in completion percentage? Probably not. But I don't really care if he also leads in like deep touchdown passes and average yards per attempt. Like, I don't want him to be a check down guy. Part of Caleb's brilliance is his big game hunting ability. So he just needs to be mid-60s in the completion percentage, and everything else is going to fall in line.
One last note on the Chicago Bears here, Danny, and then we'll go to Championship Sunday, maybe a little on the national championship game. Whether it's right, wrong, or indifferent, I actually think it's right, just because we see this happen in the NFL all the time. We've seen it with the Bears a couple times, most notably after the 13-3 year with Dick Duran and Jim Miller in 2001. We saw it with the Commanders this year, right, where you have this great playoff run with a young quarterback, and just the assumption is they're going to be back in business the next season. So I say that to say this. I think there will be a lot of people this summer who are going to say, well, the Bears forced all these turnovers, and they won all these close games, and there's going to be some hashtag regression to the mean, and they're going to go under the win total, and they're going to miss the playoffs, and the season's going to be a disappointment. Now, I don't agree with that because I love the coach and quarterback, but you know that stuff is coming. What do you make of that here early in the process? Because you know that's going to be a talking point over the next 6 months.
I think that it's totally fair. I think it's a totally fair amount of skepticism. The two, and I'll add one. Like the turnovers is the most obvious place for regression, and offensive line health is the like Joe Tooney, Jonah Jackson, Drew Dahlman, and Darnell Wright. So left guard to right tackle. I believe I have this right. All played more than 95% of the snaps this season for the Bears. Their only real turnover at left tackle was Trapillo and Braxton Jones in the left tackle situation. I believe I have that right. So they were remarkably healthy on their offensive line. And that likely will not happen again. But they will be better in their front seven because they'll spend resources on it. And you know what can cover up some of those places of regression? A massive leap at quarterback. Like, you know, it's the most valuable thing in the NFL. Like Luther Burden, rookie. Roma Dunze, second-year player. Colston Loveland, rookie. Caleb Williams, second-year player. Like top 3 offensive targets and quarterback in year 2 of Ben Johnson's offense. Like I think that can cover up an injury to the right guard.
And we'll see, by the way, what the Cardinals do at play caller. There's a chance Colston Loveland's going to be the first tight end drafted in fantasy football next year. This is not a fantasy football conversation, but just to say, like, the sky is the limit for Colston Loveland and what he can be in the Chicago. And you know I love Luther Burden, so I love that for the Bears. Danny Parkins with us on the show. First things first on Fox Sports 1. You better you bet. Nick Kostos, Westwood One Sports on this Tuesday. Got about 4 minutes left. Would love your thoughts on the 2 games on Championship Sunday. Why don't we begin with the Rams, the team that knocked your Bears out of the playoffs, in Seattle against the Seahawks. Betting market, Danny, bouncing around 2.5 to 3. And I know like you'll save your bets for the end of the week on television. So just like your thoughts on the game, or bets if you'd like to give them. Seattle 2.5, 47.5, Seahawks and Rams. What are you thinking?
Yeah, 7-3 against the spread start to me for the playoffs. Picking every game on the show, liking that. Listen,
nice way to sneak that in there.
It wasn't really much of a sneak. You should have led with it.
That was a Reggie Gilliam tush push with Josh Allen, pushing you 10 yards.
Nothing humble about this brag. I think that the Rams have been overrated by the market for a while now. I thought like what the Bears defense did to the Rams, you can say some of that was conditions, but I think that is indicative of they're not as much of a juggernaut as they were over the course of the regular season. And then down the stretch, their defense allowed 28 a game. Now, the Bears only scored, obviously, 17 in that spot. But I do think that Seattle at home, Seattle healthier, Seattle a little bit more rested when you factor in, like, the game against San Francisco was such a laugher, and they had the bye. I just think there's every indication in the world that this is Seattle's NFC to lose.
So Seattle over the Rams for now early in the week.
Yeah.
What about the AFC game with Jarrett Stidham starting for the Broncos at home against Drake May and the New England Patriots?
How do you feel like the networks would like a Sam Darnold, Jarrett Stidham Super Bowl? That would be... Maybe they would just show a replay of the Seahawks-Broncos Super Bowl with Russell Wilson and Peyton Manning instead. Right. It is I think that it will be a horrifying loss for the Patriots that obviously is possible because Drake May has taken 10 sacks in these 2 playoff games, and he takes a ton of sacks, and he's got to go to Denver and deal with that noise and deal with that pass rush. And their offensive line, specifically the left side of their offensive line, really looked shaky against the Texans. And while the Broncos aren't the Texans, their pass rush is obviously pretty damn good. So I think that this game is going to be weird. I think it's going to be ugly. I think it will be close. The Texans were able to play the Patriots to, a 12-point game with 5 turnovers. So if Stiddy, and that honestly made me like him a little bit. Like Sean Payton calling him Stiddy right after the game. Like, I know that that's just like a coach trying to inject. Like he was like, I'm speaking to my team as I speak to you, the media. I was like, ooh, that worked. Like that worked on me. So I think that the number's a little big for my liking, but I'm not ready to make a pick on that one yet, but I don't think that that's going to be a cakewalk for the Patriots.
How about this, by the way, as far as Stiddy is concerned? What a sentence. We had Jason McCourty on my show on Sunday leading up to the games. McCourty was with Stidham in 2019 with the Patriots. Unprovoked, he called him Stiddy like 3 times in the intervieu. So I think is, right?
That's his nickname. Like that's
Stiddy.
Just what he is. I've been thinking about this. And you're good at NFL history, and I know we don't have a ton of time, but like no coach in the history of the league has won a Super Bowl with 2 different franchises. Sean Payton obviously could be the first. What do we have to do with like Sean Payton's all-time NFL coaching ranking if he becomes the first coach to win a Super Bowl with 2 franchises and he wins the last 2 games with Jarrett Stidham.
I think Peyton was probably a borderline Hall of Famer prior to this. He's in immediately, and then we can kind of go from there. I want to. Can we do this? I'd love to do this next week with you because I love that. Yeah. You're the best. At Danny Parkins,
right,
First Things First, later today on Fox Sports 1, 5 to 6 p.m. Eastern time. We never have enough time for Danny. With floating breaks, hard time breaks, he's the best. On the other side, a conversation with ESPN college football analyst, the great Greg McElroy, on last night's national title game.
The biggest names in the business are on You Better You Bet with Nick Kostos.
Hey, this is Joe Buck, and you have done it. You have found it. You are listening to You Better You Bet. Great decision.
Hi, this is Kevin Harlan of CBS, Westwood One, and TNT, and I'm listening as you do every day to You Better You Bet with the most handsome single man in the radio business. A man who, if I was not married for 38 years, I might consider myself the kind of guy that can electrify a listening audience and a crowd of bystanders watching him do what he does so well each and every day. Continue to listen right here on You Better You Bet.
This is You Better You Bet on Westwood One Sports. Brought to you by BetMGM.
The terrific Football Tuesday edition of You Better You Bet rolls on. Nick Kostos, our amazing crew, and you here on Westwood One Sports. Oh, man, that first hour of the show got my juices going. Got me all sorts of revved up. Talking Indiana's national championship game win over Miami. Why? This was a game that was in the balance in the final minute. Could have gone either way. And Indiana, in the big spots, executing the way Indiana needed to execute to win a national championship. The greatest coaching job in the history of sports by Curt Cignetti. The greatest turnaround in the history of sports, taking Indiana from doormat to champion. And really enjoyed our conversation with Danny Parkins, First Things First on Fox Sports 1 to close the hour, which has spilled into text with Danny and myself, where we are now talking about Sean Payton's spot in NFL history, coaching lore. If he wins this Super Bowl, which would be his second, one with each franchise, one with the Saints, one with the Broncos, and if he does it with a backup quarterback, kind of what his status in NFL history would be, I have compiled a list that I think Sean Payton would be on if this happens and the Broncos win the Super Bowl with Jarrett Stidham. Maybe we'll do that today. We could certainly do it leading up to the AFC Championship game, and obviously if the Broncos beat the Patriots on Championship Sunday. Later this hour, we will take a stop at Kenny's Corner. We'll talk Jimmy Butler's season-ending torn ACL for the Golden State Warriors and more. Looking forward to that. The best audio from the day that was in the Monday in sports and in life. I will give you my opinion on Robert Saleh being named the head coach of the Tennessee Titans, Jeff Hafley being named the head coach of the Miami Dolphins, and which hire I like more. But right now on the show, and we're always very honest with you, our audience, right? So we taped this morning, 7:30, maybe closer to 7:40, who cares, Eastern time this morning. Shout out to our crew, including Kenny Henderson, who's an hour behind us. So that's like 6:40 a.m. Eastern in Chicago. It's like 20 degrees here in New York. I don't even want to think about how cold it is in Chicago. Kenny schlepping to the studio to pre-record this interview with Greg McElroy. Kenny says it's minus 5 degrees in Chicago right now. In New York, it's 17. Feels like 4 degrees here in New York. Wow, I got to tell you, love winter in the Northeast and the Midwest. What a great place to live. What the hell? So Greg McElroy, great job by Bill booking Greg McElroy today. A-plus spot, obviously. Calls the national championship game last night on ESPN Radio with Sean McDonough. So you are in for a treat to hear this conversation with Greg. His college football podcast, Always College Football, is so good. I listen to it all the time. Told Greg that off air, and they had a great call of the game last night. We touched on a number of topics, including Fernando Mendoza's NFL prospects, but I started the interview by asking Greg how he's feeling at the end of a long season after having called the national championship game literally like 12 hours ago.
I'm a little tired, a little sleepy, but it's, you kind of run on adrenaline, I feel like, on the Tuesday after. I feel like this every year, and I almost write down notes on it. It's like, hey, today's going to be hard, but it's going to be awesome. And that's kind of where we're at right now, man. I mean, it was such a cool experience last night to see a team like Indiana kind of finish it the way they finished it. It was just an incredible year for them all season. So it was rewarding and exhausting and tired, like all the things, all the emotions that you feel. And it's a little sad, the season's over, but it's just wild, man. What a worthy champion we were able to crown last night.
And Greg, there is, and I actually, and I'll ask you about this later. I think this was the best college football season in recent memory. And I said it during the season. I loved how the playoff played out. We can get to that in a little bit, but I have to start with Indiana, and there's a ton of hyperbole out there, right? Or some people will say it's hyperbole, that this is the greatest turnaround, forget about college football, like in the history of sports, and that Curt Cignetti has just authored the greatest coaching job, not just in the history of college football, but in the history of sports. And this is one of the greatest stories ever. Now, I personally do not think any of that is hyperbole. I think it's all accurate. Now that it's over, Greg, Indiana are the national champions of college football. Where do you come down on all of that with Indiana and this being the greatest story, the greatest coaching job, et cetera?
Well, I mean, it's looking at it through the prism of historically great turnarounds. I mean, are there some others that maybe come to mind? Perhaps, but in our world in college football, I mean, to go from a historically futile, worst to first type of approach is insane. I mean, to see it in the NFL is one thing. It happens. I mean, we've seen several times. I mean, Joe Burrow in 2 years was able to take the team with the number one overall pick, Super Bowl. I mean, it happens. It does happen, but it is remarkably rare. And I think in college football, what's most crazy about it is it's never been a sport where you have that upward mobility. I mean, college football is a tried and true blue blood oriented sport where it's supposed to be the haves and the have-nots, and you can't break in. That's what it's always been. And are there rare examples of which a team maybe comes out of nowhere and gets it done? Sure. I mean, TCU made the national championship a couple of years ago, but they didn't win it. Georgia Tech and Colorado have split a national championship 35 years ago. There have been other examples in which there were teams that are the historically, built-in blue blood advantages. But college football's changed greatly in the last couple of years, and you actually have the chance now to elevate. And I think, too, one thing that we see all the time in March Madness is you see a team that might have 5 or 6 guys that are all in their 4th and 5th year that have all played together and all play really well together. Them go on a run and make a deep run into the tournament, into the Final Four. And, it's like, man, where did George Mason come from? It's unbelievable. But then it kind of makes sense. Usually the bubble bursts when they start going against the blue blood teams. Oh yeah, well, they were great until they had to play against Kansas, but they were not just the upstart, the Cinderella, the great story, but also the best program. So I know it's a long answer and it could have been a lot shorter, but it's just hard to wrap your head around, frankly. It's almost surreal, I think, and I think Curt Cignetti would probably admit that to you as well.
I said it at the start of the show, and look, if there's a time to kind of reflect on stuff, to be fair, it's the day after the national championship game, and I said it to start the show. It doesn't feel real that Indiana's the national champion, right? And something you said on that answer, Greg, triggers another question in my head, right? And I think you're the perfect person to answer this question because you talk about the haves and the have-nots and the blue bloods in college football, and you won a national champion for the blue blood program of this century in college football at Alabama. And now we're entering a new landscape in college football where you can get a TCU that plays in the national championship game or an Indiana that wins the national championship. Just as a college football fan, which I am, and someone who gets paid to talk about sports, I look at this and I absolutely love that there's a college basketball feel to the college football playoff now. As someone who quarterbacked the blue blood program of this century, where do you think this is great for? I think it's great for the sport. What say Greg McElroy on the direction that things are headed in college football?
So I think it's great. I mean, I think it gives everyone hope. I mean, it's hope springs eternal, and it's like everybody's fired up for their season in July. I mean, everybody's undefeated, and everybody's transfer portal class is the greatest transfer portal class ever. Everyone they lost off last year's team stunk, and now we're actually better. It's like everyone thinks that. I think it's great. I do think they're eventually we're going to have to get to the point where expectations adjust. And I think Curt Cignetti's probably ruined it for everybody because everybody thinks, oh, you just wave the magic wand and you're good to go. But this was a pretty remarkable run of talent and players that all came together and created a culture internally that is not normal, not in today's day and age. It's a very transactional world that we're living in. in college athletics across the board where, hey, what can you do for me? That's the question these guys are asking in the recruiting process. But I think what's been fascinating about Indiana is it's like the players asked Cignetti, what can I do to help? That to me is a very different approach to what we're seeing in college athletics most of the time now, because a lot of these top high-profile recruits, they're all highly paid, and I'm not saying they're not motivated. They probably are motivated in some cases, but maybe not as motivated as the guy that's been told he's not good enough for the last 4 years in the recruiting process. So I think we're in a really fascinating time. I think teams are about to adjust. They're about to reassess. There's going to be I would imagine a lot of personality tests during recruiting visits now. And trying to find the right guys will still be very, very difficult and still be hard to do. But it's fascinating. I think it's great because, yes, you can get there, but I think it's also harder to get there now, as crazy as that may sound, because it's harder to find the guys that will allow you to get there now and to create that culture the way Indiana was able to create it. It's rare, and I don't think it's something you'll see very often.
You Better You Bet on this Tuesday. Westwood One Sports. Nick Kostos here with you. My guest, Greg McElroy, ESPN college football analyst, was on the radio call with Sean McDonough of the national championship game, Indiana beating Miami. And his college football podcast, Always College Football, if you like the sport, is an absolute must listen. Greg, we got about 5 minutes left. I have a couple things I'd like to hit you with. And, we got to ask you about the quarterback, right? Fernando Mendoza, the star of this Indiana team, widely considered to be like the presumptive number one pick in the NFL draft to the Las Vegas Raiders, with Tom Brady in attendance last night at the game. How do you put Mendoza's season into perspective?
Storybook, man. I mean, and I wasn't sure, I think I watched him a lot this regular season. I was like, he's very good, really good player. He took it to the next level in the playoffs, man. Like, just next level stuff. The accuracy, and particularly against Alabama. I mean, he was unbelievable against Alabama. He was really, really, really impressive against Oregon. But, man, that 2-game stretch was insane. And then last night, he didn't have his fastball. It was not his best day. He missed a couple throws. He got hit a lot. I mean, they harassed him, but he was able to somehow find a way to make a massive impact anyways. A couple massive conversions down the stretch, super clutch performance. And then the quarterback draw, I mean, where he just put not just his body on the line, but his life on the line. I mean, that was insane. On the 4th and 5 dice roll, the guy's going to be the first overall pick. I mean, guys now are sliding before they get to the first down. And he's like, no. I got the first down. I'm not satisfied with that. I'm going to go and do what it takes to try to get the ball in the end zone. It's just remarkable. Like, he is so much bigger than you think, too. He's a great kid. He's a hyper competitor, and I think his game's going to translate beautifully. I think he's going to be a great pro. I mean, if I were the Raiders, I could not sprint to the stage fast enough to turn in that draft ticket. I mean, I want Fernando Mendoza to be my guy going forward, and I think I don't know if it's hard to find can't-miss guys nowadays because it's just the systems are so different, the translating, and how many games you have played, and there's so many different factors, but he feels to me about as safe as it gets, I think, when it comes to evaluating at the top of the draft from a quarterback standpoint.
We had your broadcast partner last week on the show, Sean McDonough, come on, and he said that the Raiders should disband the franchise if they don't take Fernando Mendoza first overall. And I have to be honest, I agree with Sean McDonough on that. Greg, we need to spend like a minute on the runner-up of last night's game. Like, an unbelievable year for Mario Cristobal in Miami, getting to the national championship game. Like, had a chance to win it in the final minute. What about the Miami Hurricanes and the season with Mario Cristobal, Carson Beck, and the Hurricanes?
Well, I mean, it's a great year. I mean, it's disappointing for them that they couldn't finish the deal, and that was a really talented roster that was kind of 3 years in the making. So they're going to have to reset and rebuild, but I feel like the one thing I always admire teams that are built in their coach's image, and that I don't know if there's a team that feels more on brand when it comes to their coach's personality than Miami. I think they know exactly who they are. I think they know exactly what they want to be. And I think they are a really, really, really solid program that knows how to get the job done. So I'm very, very encouraged by what I saw this year. It'll be hard, I think, to reset and to replace some of the key pieces along the offensive and defensive line. but it proves that there's proof of concept there. And Mario had those guys willing and ready to run through a brick wall for him. So it just goes to show you the connection that he still has with the players. And while it wasn't quite enough, they should be really proud of the run that they just went on in the postseason.
2 more minutes with Greg McElroy. 2 questions for you, Greg. A little birdie has told me that you are it's my executive producer, Bill, and I knew it anyway, that you are a huge fan of the Los Angeles Dodgers. I said last week on the show that everyone that wants to bitch and moan and whine and complain about the Kyle Tucker signing, and I'm a Yankee fan saying this, Greg, I wish my team still spent like this. I think it's great for the sport. They can be an awesome villain. I think they're going to three-peat. As a big Dodger fan, where do you come down in 30 seconds on the Kyle Tucker signing as the rich literally get richer?
I mean, I can't believe they still allow these deferred contracts. It's insane. It's like, what? How is it that we're able to put together the roster that we have? And I love it. I mean, yes, it gives us a tremendous competitive advantage. I think having all-star teams in baseball is I'd be so frustrated if I were a small market, because unlike college football, it doesn't feel like there's much access for the small market franchise right now when you're having to run up against an absolute juggernaut like the Dodgers have, and that lineup's going to be absurd next year. Still, you got to have the arms to do it. The bats are ridiculous. I hope the arms will be good enough, but it's a good time to be a fan of the boys in blue. That's for sure. The last couple of years, after 30 years of futility and frustration as a Dodger fan, we were good, never good enough. The last few years have made it very much worth the wait. That's for sure. But my 6-year-old's remarkably spoiled. So we got to definitely calm him down a little bit. He doesn't realize how hard it is to win because he only knows victories as a Dodger fan.
Well, worst comes to worst, Yamamoto can start the game and he can close the game. Absolutely unbelievable. Last one, Greg, really quickly here. I said it to Sean McDonough when he joined us last week. I say it when you're not here, when Sean's not here, so I feel comfortable saying it to you while you are here with us. You and Sean, I think, have kind of ascended into like rarefied air calling football games. You guys were unbelievable this entire season. The call of Ole Miss, Georgia, specifically on New Year's night, stands out to me as like a legendary all-timer. But you guys were magnificent all season long. My opinion, you guys should be calling NFL games, but that may be a story for another time. Do you feel that way, like in the moment, that like, wow, like, not that, the crew is great too, and you guys have a great support staff around you, but that, man, like, you guys absolutely drilled it this year doing your jobs?
Well, I really appreciate you saying that. I mean, it was a really rewarding season, and a lot of people I talked to last night are always, hey, what do you think of this? What do you think? Oh, great year, congrats. You're only as good as your game, so you got to have a great game, and we've been very, very lucky to have a great run this year on the games, and I just am so lucky to have such an incredible teammate and such an incredible guy to work alongside him. I think he is the voice of his generation. I don't think there's anyone better, and it is a true privilege to get to call a game with him every week. So really, really lucky, and he's made me better, and I've learned so much working with him the last 3 years. But yeah, we finished on a bit of a heater with some great games, so we're very, very lucky, and we look forward to carrying over that momentum into next year and kind of hit the ground running here as soon as possible.
Just one man's opinion. You'll get some downtime coming up, obviously, with the season ending. I hope you have a moment in your personal life where you're able just to sit and reflect and be like, man, like we were real, because you guys were, like, sincerely, like you guys were exceptional. I said it to Sean last week. I say it when you're not here. You guys really helped make the season better for a lot of college football fans calling the games that you did as well as you did. Really appreciate your time. You're extremely generous. Have a great day today and enjoy some downtime, and we'll catch up with you soon.
I appreciate you, buddy. Thanks for having me.
Greg McElroy joining us here on the show. Always College Football is the awesome college football podcast, and an amazing job, obviously, with Sean McDonough on both television and radio for our friends at ESPN. We'll take a quick break. More You Better You Bet on Westwood One Sports coming up next.
Now,
All right.
back to You Better You Bet with Nick Kostos on Westwood One Sports.
Awesome interview with Greg McElroy. Absolutely loved it. How about that, by the way? Greg McElroy is just like, yeah, I'm going to call the national championship game, be up really late, and get up early in the morning to come on You Better You Bet on Westwood One Sports. His podcast is absolutely awesome. Always college football. He did a great job calling the games this entire season with our friend Sean McDonough. So thank you very much to Greg McElroy for coming on the show. Carrington Harrison will join us next hour. He is the drive time host of Odyssey Sports Radio in Kansas City. We'll talk about Eric Bieniemy and the Kansas City Chiefs, Matt Nagy and the Kansas City Chiefs. I think Carrington will have very interesting perspective for us on that impending hire in Kansas City. Connor Orr next hour from Sports Illustrated, who has been doing an incredible job covering all the NFL coaching vacancies, hires, interviews, etc. in the NFL. So Carrington Harrison still to come, and Connor Orr still to come. Last night, 2 more coaching vacancies filled in the National Football League. The Miami Dolphins going to hire Green Bay Packers defensive coordinator Jeff Hafley. But we'll start with the Tennessee Titans hiring Niners defensive coordinator and former Jets head coach Robert Saleh. So Saleh was the Jets coach for 3+ seasons, from 21 to 24, and he got fired after 5 games last season. And when it happened, I didn't have much of an issue with it when the Jets fired Robert Saleh. Felt like that was a season where they were all in because of everything that went on with Aaron Rodgers, the Devontae Adams trade. That was a roster that was constructed to win now. And when they weren't winning, and when they got embarrassed in London against the Minnesota Vikings, I was not surprised at all that the team fired Robert Saleh. And I criticized Saleh a lot on the show, in the old iteration of the show, both with me and Ken Barkley and with me and Femi last year on You Better You Bet. And my big beef with Robert Saleh was he's extremely conservative as a head coach. Now, lots of coaches have issues with game management. And I know it's easy for me to say that, watching the games on my couch. I really do think that you could take like someone who plays Madden and they would manage the game better than some of these NFL coaches do, or college coaches. I actually believe that that's true. Not that like people could do their jobs, but that facet of the job, I feel like a lot of people are really lacking. But I mean, look, like Sean McVay is one of the best coaches in the league. He's probably going to go to the Hall of Fame when it's all said and done. He managed the end of the game in brutal fashion on Sunday night against the Chicago Bears. So yeah, like I don't love Saleh's game management, but there's lots of coaches who are really good coaches who aren't great managing the game. The other really big thing I think you can use as a piece of criticism against Robert Saleh that's fair is the way that he handled the media in his time as Jets head coach, which is not to imply that he was combative with the media. I actually think he was way too nice. And there's a story here locally, which we talked about on the national show, on the old iteration of the show, that Robert Saleh became kind of buddy-buddy with a guy named Joe Beningo. And if you're out there watching and listening and you don't know who Joe Beningo is, I'm going to tell you. That's okay. Joe Beningo was like a local New York sports radio legend that like I grew up listening to. He is a psychotic fan of the New York Jets. And like he became like buddy-buddy with Saleh, and Saleh would go golfing with him. And Beningo would kind of like go on the air and like spill the beans on some of the stuff Saleh would tell him that was presumably off record, right? And it was just like, okay, like you want to be friends with someone in the media? Like, all right, like I get it. It just seemed like he took it a little too far. Maybe he's a little naive in that instance. And I don't think he handled the New York media that well. Okay, like now he's going to be the head coach in Tennessee. And this is not to imply that the Titans media isn't great and doesn't do a great job. I think they do a really good job. But I mean, nothing's like it is in New York or like Philadelphia or here in the Northeast, where the media is like kind of ruthless and is all up on your ass. I think you'll have an easier time of that in Tennessee. And if we're going to be really fair, and I want to be really fair to Robert Saleh, who I have criticized a lot, never really had a great situation to work with the Jets on offense. Now, he's not picking the players, right? Joe Douglas, the former GM's picking the players. So Saleh gets hired following heading into the 21 season. And the Jets that April, with the second overall pick in the draft, select Zach Wilson. Now, you know, I remember doing shows that summer with Ken Barkley, and we were like, listen, like Zach Wilson was a big price to win Offensive Rookie of the Year, and we have no idea who's good and who's not good. Maybe he would be a good bet. As it turned out, he was terrible. It's like an absolute total bust. So that's Saleh's first quarterback. Like, absolute bust. No doubt, no brainer bust. Can't play, will never start again. And if he does start, it'll be in spot duty or at the end of a season for a team that's out of it or has clinched home field advantage. He can't play. That's Saleh's first quarterback. And then the Aaron Rodgers debacle. And to be clear, and I want to be consistent, I liked it when they brought Aaron Rodgers in. I liked it. I felt like the Jets had a roster that was ready to win. And I felt like Rodgers still had some left in the tank. And I still feel that way to a degree, right? I bet the Steelers to make the playoffs this year because I believed in Aaron Rodgers. So I liked the Rodgers signing. Literally, 4 plays into Rodgers' first season, Monday Night Football against the Buffalo Bills, he pops his Achilles. Done. Here's Zach Wilson. Like, your season's over. Sorry, that's it. And then the next year, when Rodgers comes back, you know, I joked early in last season for the Jets. There's a moment, I think it's the Thursday night game against the Patriots, where the Jets kill the Patriots on Thursday night, maybe it was week 3, where Saleh goes to hug Rodgers after like a touchdown or whatever, and Rodgers kind of blows him off. And people in New York and nationally made a big deal about that. And they said, well, like, you know, how could Aaron Rodgers how could this happen? And Aaron Rodgers has disrespected the head coach. And I remember saying on the air, who cares? Aaron Rodgers is the coach and the GM of the New York Jets. Like, they brought in Alan Lazard. They traded for Devontae Adams. Rodgers ran the team last year. It was Aaron Rodgers' operation. And what I said was, who cares if Rodgers blows off Saleh? Rodgers is the guy with the power. It's a story if it's the other way around. Like, that would be a story. Like, Rodgers was the guy that had all the cards. Rodgers is the guy making the calls. And as it turns out, probably wasn't great, right? Nathaniel Hackett, his buddy, brought in to be the offensive coordinator. Yada, yada, yada. And Robert Saleh fired. Saleh goes to San Francisco this year and works miracles. You bet on this Tuesday. Nick Kostos here with you, Westwood One Sports, on social media at the Kostos, THEKOSTOS. And works absolute miracles with the Niners defense that loses early in the season 2 future first ballot Hall of Famers in Nick Bosa and Fred Warner. And somehow, some way, gets the team to the divisional round of the playoffs. And whether or not you want to criticize Kevin Patullo and Nick Sirianni and Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown and the Eagles, like, the defense was awesome and got them to the divisional rounds of the playoffs and beat Philadelphia on Wild Card Weekend. So Robert Saleh is unquestionably a terrific defensive coach. He is. There's no one ever debated that he can call defense, and he's a really, really good defensive-minded coach. Where I came down on Robert Saleh is, I feel like and felt like maybe he's more of a coordinator and not a head coach. But I really think what we have to do is look at it in its totality, where he didn't have a quarterback and working for a really dysfunctional organization in the Jets. And whether or not you're a Jets fan or not, you have to agree with me, right? It is a dysfunctional organization. And it's not that the Tennessee Titans, with their ownership structure and the constant restructuring of the general manager and the president of football operations and who negotiates the contracts, it's not like they're the Pittsburgh Steelers, like, in terms of stability, but they're better than the Jets. And we see it all the time in sports. How many coaches are made by their quarterbacks and maybe wouldn't have won otherwise? So here's my proposed scenario to all the listeners, to you, the listener, to you, the viewer. What if Cam Ward's really good? What if Cam Ward is really good? And yeah, struggled early in his rookie season to the point, like, He's dealing with Brian Cat, who's going to go down as one of the worst NFL head coaches ever. Not that he can't have a successful career moving forward. As a head coach, like, terrible play caller, terrible motivator, didn't know the rules and couldn't manage the clock and couldn't manage timeouts. Other than that, he was awesome. And then here's retread Mike McCoy with no weapons, where Chimere DK and Alec Iamaner and Gunnar Helm are your top weapons in the passing game. You got no chance. Zero, right? And Cam Ward still played well at the end of the season. So let's say Cam Ward's good, and we'll see who the offensive coordinator is. I have heard from people in the league, I'm not reporting this, it may not happen, maybe he gets a head coaching job. I have heard Mike McDaniel's name floated out to be the offensive coordinator in Tennessee and work for Saleh with the San Francisco Shanahan connection, right? I'm not saying that's going to happen. Let's say it's McDaniel or Mike LaFleur, who was with him with the Jets prior to Nathaniel Hackett, who's on the Rams staff now. McVay calls the plays. Let's say it's someone from that tree, the Shanahan-McVay tree, to work with Cam Ward, and Cam Ward's good. The Titans have the 5th pick in the draft. You would imagine it will be one of either Reuben Bain or Arvell Reese, one of the top pass rushers on the board. Robert Saleh is going to call the defensive plays for the Tennessee Titans. And he didn't for the Jets, and as it's been reported, I think Diana Rossini of The Athletic had it this morning, that Saleh kind of regretted not calling the plays on defense, felt like he was a little more disconnected from the game, and he'll be calling the plays on defense. And you love that if you're a Titans fan. So the scenario that I just laid out, is it really that unrealistic? That Cam Ward's good, you get a good play caller in, and your offense is going to be good if that's the case. If the young quarterback is good, chances are your offense is going to be pretty good. You'll call the plays on defense. I actually misspoke. The Giants have the 5th pick. The Titans have the 4th pick. And it's Bain or Arvell Reese, and you get some juice on the edge to go along with Simmons and Sweat in the middle of the defensive line stopping the run. How does that make you feel about the 2026 Tennessee Titans? Now, I'm not making the case that they're going to win the AFC South or they're going to be a playoff team. Not yet, at least. I'm not saying that. But after sleeping on it and thinking about it this morning, I will say I'm way more optimistic about the Saleh hiring than I was when I first saw it last night. Get the defense in gear, Cam Ward, and that's going to be what it comes down to. Is Cam Ward good or not? I think he's going to be. And if you're out there listening or watching and you think Cam Ward's going to be good, there's no reason the Titans can't be a playoff team next year in the AFC. Now, as for the Miami Dolphins and Jeff Hafley, the Packers defensive coordinator, who's going to be the head coach there, and this is an easy dot to connect. I thought it might be Matt LaFleur. LaFleur obviously signs the extension. So the Packers hire last week John Eric Sullivan, who was the Dolphins vice president of player personnel, to be the new GM in Miami. So no surprise he brings someone over from Green Bay. It's defensive coordinator Jeff Hafley. I have no idea how this is going to go. Zero. No idea. Hafley was the head coach at Boston College for 4 years and had a losing record, 22-26. And then is the coordinator for a couple of years with Green Bay and does a pretty good job. But, Micah Parsons gets hurt, and everything goes to hell at the end of the season for the Green Bay Packers defense. What everyone in the NFL, to a man, on record or off record, will say about Jeff Hafley is that he is an excellent, an A-plus communicator and leader of men, and has a great skill of being able to reach players and getting the most out of players. And I think that's going to be something very important with the Miami Dolphins moving forward. Because like I told you when the Dolphins fired Mike McDaniel, John Harbaugh was never going to Miami. A win-now coach is never going to go to Miami. Not that the Giants are going to win the Super Bowl, but the Giants are way closer than the Dolphins are. Miami is at the start of what I think is going to be, at minimum, a 2 off-season rebuild to get the team not even in contention to win a Super Bowl, in contention for a playoff berth. I don't think they're close right now. So Hafley gets a 5-year deal with the expectation and the thought, I'm sure, that this is going to take some time and that they're going to be a young team and there'll be a youth movement and he's going to be the one that's going to develop these players moving forward into what they hope to be a contender. We'll see who the staff ends up being, who the offensive play caller is going to be. For me, like, whether or not Hafley succeeds is going to be way less about that and way more about how they treat a couple things, at least the start of it this offseason, where I look at Jeff Hafley's first big decision not being who's going to be the offensive play caller. Like, that's Robert Saleh's first decision because the Titans are way closer to competing than the Dolphins are. Jeff Hafley's first decisions need to be, what do we do with Tyreek Hill? And what do we do with Tua Tagovailoa? My opinion, you get Tyreek Hill, and that's an easy one. Like, Tyreek Hill needs to have played his last down in Miami. Like, that's easy. And hopefully that's what happens for the Dolphins. And maybe he goes back to Kansas City. He can be successful, whatever. He needs to be off the Dolphins. And I think you eat the money and you get Tua off the roster. So those are his big couple decisions, right? The first couple decisions for Jeff Hafley. What to do with Tyreek and what to do with Tua. Because let's just say he hires an offensive coordinator and it's a disaster in year one. Great, you could fire that guy and move on. Because I don't know if the Dolphins are getting their quarterback of the future, like in this offseason. That might be for next offseason, with where Miami's picking in the draft and the dearth of top quarterback prospects this year in the NFL draft. I think we're going to know pretty early if the Robert Saleh hire is a good one. If the Titans go like 5-12 next year, like, I don't know if they're coming back from that. Because it will probably mean Cam Ward's not very good. So we're going to have an answer, I think, to the Saleh hire, like probably this season coming up. I don't think we're going to be able to judge the Jeff Hafley hire for at least 2 years. And this is not me like copping out, not giving you a strong opinion. I kind of think that is a strong opinion. I don't think they're going to be good for a couple years. We're not going to know. They got a lot of work to do to fix this roster. They don't have the quarterback. They've got like 2 legitimately good skill players. How many good players do the Dolphins have? Not many, right? Not many. It's going to take a little bit of time. The one thing that I will say about Jeff Hafley, his glow up, am I too old to use that phrase? 42? Maybe. His glow up is legendary. And I'm not talking physical appearance because he's got like the flat top haircut. Jeff, you're going to South Beach. Can you get a better haircut, please? This guy, a couple years ago, is the head coach at Boston College. And he's 22-26 in 4 seasons there. And he kind of sees what's happening in the landscape of NIL. And look what happened with Bill O'Brien at Boston College. They're terrible. They don't have the resources yet to compete. Maybe they'll get them. Maybe they could be Indiana. That's what's great about college football now. Give them a lot of money and you can have a winning program. Hafley kind of saw the writing on the wall and said, I'm going to take what some people may consider to be a step back. And I'm going to leave a head coaching job in college football to be a coordinator in the NFL. 2 years ago, Jeff Hafley was the head coach at Boston College, and no one knew who he was nationally. Fast forward to today, and he's the head coach of the Miami Dolphins. This is like an actor 2 years ago starring in like the off-Broadway rendition of like Cats or Les Miserables. And now he's the lead in like the new Marvel movie. One of the great bet on yourself moments in the history of sports here for Jeff Hafley. Last note here. Maybe it'll be Malik Willis, who obviously is the backup quarterback last year in Green Bay. Maybe he brings Malik Willis in to be the starting quarterback this year in Miami. And maybe Malik Willis is the answer. Maybe. Maybe not. And I'll be consistent. Even if the Dolphins, and I like Malik Willis a lot. How could you not? Even if the Dolphins sign Malik Willis, this is not meant to be an anti-Malik Willis take. Just that I think the roster needs a lot of work. I think we are talking minimum 2027 before we can have a legit conversation about the Dolphins being a legit contender for the postseason. Quick break. On the other side, Penny's Corner, some of the best audio from the day that was in the world of sports. Next.
Back to You Better You Bet with Nick Kostos and the crew. Presented by BetMGM on Westwood One Sports.
BetMGM account holders will receive an Any Sport Parlay Boost token. Score a bigger payout if your wager with the Parlay Boost token hits. Tokens can be used on parlays and same-game parlays. Download the BetMGM app today. Our friend Kenny Henderson is with us for Kenny's Corner. Kenny, what do we got coming up first?
Sorry, I had to hit the bed there and turn my mic on. That might be a good idea. We had Jimmy Butler getting injured for the Golden State Warriors last night. A tough injury, a torn ACL. He's going to be lost for the season. Let's take a listen to how the broadcast reacted.
You can see the pain on his face. He's wincing. And now you're just saying your prayers for this man. It changes everything. I mean, this guy, you can't overstate how important he is to the Warriors. He was coming on so strong, too, having just an amazing season.
Okay, just first thing. Okay, Mike, can you put Kenny on camera for a second here? I know it looks bad. Let's just do this on purpose. So just for everyone.
I don't know what the issue is here with this camera here.
For everyone watching the show right now. I don't even, how would you describe this? Like, it's a Kenny's like very blurry, right? I don't even know what this is supposed to look like.
This is like a 60 Minutes interview when you don't get to know who the person is that's talking.
Yes, like Kenny is basically like the whistleblower, like someone who will get killed if we can see him. He's being blurred here. You can't tell that it's Kenny. We can hear it's Kenny. Just really quickly on the Jimmy Butler thing, just to get this into the show. So Sham Sharani of ESPN overnight tweeted, torn ACL for Jimmy Butler. And we can be quick with this. The Warriors are done this season. Like, there's no move to make. The move is Jonathan Kuminga starts playing and he's an all-star. Like, but we've done this for so long with Kuminga. He hates Steve Kerr. Steve Kerr hates him. I don't know how this is going to go. The whole thesis for the Golden State Warriors this year was Butler's healthy, Curry's healthy, Draymond's healthy. You get something from pods, you get something from the young guys, and maybe you can compete in the Western Conference. Now without Jimmy Butler, stick a fork in them. They're done. Not just for this year. The dynasty's dead for the Golden State Warriors. And I don't say that lightly. Just what else is there to say? They're finished with Jimmy Butler now out for the season. Kenny, what's next?
Yeah, Nick, you suggested it, so we're going to play both the Al Davis clip and Cignetti. Which one should I play first?
Let's play Al Davis following Super Bowl 18 and then Curt Cignetti from last night. And I want people to listen, make up your own minds. Mendoza said, let's effing go, which I took as a nod to Tom Brady. Let's hear this, Al Davis and then Curt Cignetti from last night.
When you have great coaches, then after you have great coaches, you get great players. You have a great organization, and you tell them one thing. Just win, baby.
It's incredible. But, when you got the right people in your organization, coaches and players, and you got a plan and great leadership, and they commit to getting better, anything's possible.
So basically, at the end, he said anything's possible instead of tell him just win, baby. Tyler, am I nuts here? You could say yes.
No, I see it a little bit. I don't think you're crazy. I mean, I don't know why Cignetti would say it towards the Raiders. Maybe he really wants Mendoza to go number one overall. I don't know why Cignetti would kiss up to Al Davis. I think he has a pretty cushy job at Indiana. But I kind of see the corollary there. I kind of see it.
Bill?
I don't think your Mendoza take is tinfoil hat. I think that's 100%. This one, though, a little bit of a reach. I say 50-50.
Yeah, well, 50-50. I think I'm being honest. It's my take. I think it's crazy. I think you're being generous with 50-50. All right, well, we have to... You know what? Honestly, I like the bit of not being able to see Kenny. I think this is what it needs to be moving forward. Final hour, Power Hour coming up next. We'll start the hour. Carrington Harrison from Odyssey in Kansas City on a very interesting offseason for the Chiefs.
Welcome back to You Better You Bet on Westwood One Sports.
Bring it up, Kenny. Final hour. Power hour. You better you bet on Westwood One Sports. Nick Kostos, our amazing crew, and you. That's for our friends in the YouTube chat. The Power Hour and every hour here on You Better You Bet, brought to you by BetMGM. Download the BetMGM app and visit BetMGM.com so you can make it legendary. At the end of the show, I will attempt to make it legendary by winning some bets tonight in the NBA and college basketball. Got a couple games I am targeting in the NBA, and if you've listened to the show or watched the show for like any period of time, you know that we just talked about it. Jimmy Butler tore his ACL last night for the Golden State Warriors. He's done for the season. He's 36. Like, oh, who knows what it's going to be? His career is going to be like moving forward. The Warriors are playing tonight against the Toronto Raptors. If you don't think I'm laying the Warriors in game one without Jimmy Butler, you don't know ball. The rest of my bets coming up at the end of the show for the NBA and college basketball. Connor Orr from Sports Illustrated, who has been all over the NFL coaching carousel. Connor Orr is coming up later this hour. Very much look forward to that. And we'll continue to break down the national championship game. The Indiana Hoosiers beating Miami last night in just, I still can't even believe it. Like I say the sentence, is it real? That Kurt Cignetti, Fernando Mendoza, and the Hoosiers, national champions. But I'm very much looking forward to this right now because usually it's the other way around. And I've been like honored enough to be a guest on his show in Kansas City a number of times. Joining me right now here on You Better You Bet, the wildly talented Carrington Harrison, who is the host of The Drive on 96.5 The Fan in Kansas City, the Odyssey Sports radio station there, does Afternoon Drive. You hear him nationally on Mad Dog Sports Radio, on Twitter at c.harrison. Carrington, welcome to You Better You Bet. It's great to be on this side here, me interviewing you, my friend. How's it going on this Tuesday?
Yeah, I was just about to say that. I don't think I've ever been on your show before. I'm happy to say that I did hit Mark Fletcher plus 115 on an anytime touchdown yesterday, so I'm feeling good today.
I love that. And, dude, you're such a monster talent as a sports talk host, a sports talker. Just, before we get to the Kansas City Chiefs, your perspective on last night's game and Indiana winning the national championship in college football.
This is the greatest story that we've ever seen. And I don't want anybody to kind of minimize it because of the transfer portal or NIL. I mean, if you look at the teams that are in it, it's still historically the teams that are there. It was the Oregons. It was the Ohio States. It was the Georgias. It was Alabama. It was Oklahoma. The fact that in 2 years, a program that had never won 10 games before in a season, a program who had never won 9 games before in a season, the fact that they went to the playoff last year and then followed it up by winning the national championship, and you have to tell the story of the road that they went to. In 4 straight weeks, they beat Ohio State, Alabama, Oregon, and Miami in Miami to win the national championship. Like, we don't have to debate this. In terms of a 24-month span, this is the greatest thing we've ever seen in college football.
It's 100% accurate, and I started the show by saying, Carrington, a lot of people will say, like, what you just said is hyperbole, or what I'm saying is hyperbole, and we're a prisoner of the moment. I don't see it that way at all. I think everything you just said, 100% accurate. It is the greatest story and the greatest turnaround in sports, period. Man, I love getting your perspective on all things in sports, but the reason why I wanted to have you on the show today, I think what's happening right now with the Kansas City Chiefs, and just to preface this, if you're in the audience right now, you're listening or watching the show, and you're like, why are we talking about the Chiefs right now? We have Chiefs fatigue. Let's talk about the Broncos and the Patriots. This is all going to make sense because I think this story is going to matter a lot when we talk about next NFL season, Carrington, as the Chiefs are set to bring back Eric Bieniemy as their offensive coordinator and basically let Matt Nagy's contract run out. And he didn't get hired by the Tennessee Titans. And now who the hell knows what's next for him? So can you kind of like set the stage for us here as to what's happening right now in terms of the offensive coaching staff for Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes in Kansas City?
I would say it's kind of twofold. Let's start with Matt Nagy. I don't believe that Matt Nagy was ever going to come back. The Chiefs haven't been ranked higher than 16th over the 3 years that Matt Nagy was the offensive coordinator. And I think if you go 6-11 the way that the Chiefs did, you just have to make some changes. So letting the offensive coordinator's contract expire, to me, was a very logical change. I also think that Matt Nagy, if he doesn't end up being a head coach, he'll end up being somebody's offensive coordinator who does end up being a head coach. And I think he just wanted more play-calling duties and responsibilities. Everybody knows that's Andy's job, and it is your job then as the OC to kind of implement that plan and kind of make sure everything is working. So I think that's one side of it when it comes to Matt Nagy. I think their relationship has just ended. Nagy wants a little bit more responsibility than he was going to get in Kansas City, so that had to just run its course. Now it's Eric Bieniemy. I think you're bringing Eric Bieniemy back more as a quality control coach. This was the analogy I made yesterday on my radio show. Let's say that you work at a restaurant, but you don't do the cooking. You let the chef do the cooking, you let the chef go buy the groceries, you let the chef kind of prepare everything. Well, if that's not going to be your responsibility, then the customer service in that restaurant needs to be A+. From the moment you walk in the door, you better have napkins, spoons, forks. People better have water. They better have drinks. Everybody needs to have a good time there. And I think that's what the Chiefs are looking for from the offensive coordinator. So you were never going to get a Mike McDaniel who wants to call plays. You were never going to get a Cliff Kingsbury who wants to call plays. You were going to get somebody who is more going to take your idea, take your vision, and just kind of tighten the screws. And I think the feeling in Kansas City is that they've kind of missed some things. There's some things that have fallen between the cracks. I mean, this team was 6th in penalties this past year. So I think they've just kind of lost that regard. Maybe not some development when it comes to the younger players. So I think that's maybe a better way of looking at it. Eric Bieniemy is not the offensive coordinator in a traditional sense, the way that people view it. I think he is their top quality control assistant.
That's a pretty stunning indictment, to be honest. And Carrington, I don't think I'm putting words in your mouth when I say this. And Carrington Harrison, our guest, host of The Drive, 96.5 The Fan in Kansas City, on Twitter at c.harrison. I believe you don't like this hire, right? The Chiefs bringing Eric Bieniemy back as the offensive coordinator, or as you deemed it, like the world's greatest quality control coach?
No, I don't like it for a couple of different reasons. One reason is more related to sort of the audience. And you know how it is, Nick, during the season, every fan said we want different, we want change, this has grown stale. That the Chiefs had an incredible run for a 6-year period, and now it had run its course and it was time for something new. Their first major decision of the offseason was to bring back the old offensive coordinator, and now people are applauding the move. And I'm thinking, hold on, wait, you guys told me you wanted new. This is not new. This is you got divorced and then you called your ex immediately. That is not new. Go out, meet some more people. I guess when it comes to Eric Bieniemy, I've got a couple more questions. Why is he not more coveted by the rest of the league? Like, if you were going to tell me that the Chiefs think so highly of Eric Bieniemy and what he helped do with Patrick Mahomes and Kelsey and Tyreek Hill, why is that not valued by anybody else? Because the further he has gotten away from the Chiefs, his career has stalled. It stalled in Washington. He then was available. He went to UCLA to be their offensive coordinator. He didn't go to Alabama or Ohio State or one. He went to UCLA. He got fired from UCLA, and then he's available again in the NFL market. Nobody was interested in EB. He went back to being a position coach. So I also think that's important to note as well. And I guess the last point on this is why I'm not a big fan of it is, I wonder if Andy Reid would hire Andy Reid. Like, Andy Reid at one point was the offensive line coach who somebody took a chance to be a quarterback coach, and then he turned that into a great relationship with Brett Favre and then went on to be a successful head coach with the Philadelphia Eagles. Like, I keep hearing how the NFL wants the next Ben Johnson or the next Sean McVay. Well, then you got to hire that person. There is a 36-year-old quarterback coach that maybe the public doesn't know their name, but we know in 3 years that guy's going to be on everybody's radar as the next head coach in the league because that's how this thing works. We weren't talking about Clint Kubiak 2 years ago or Clay Kubiak 2 years ago, but we know that those people exist. So to me, it is your responsibility as an organization to go find that person. Go find the 36-year-old quarterback coach or passing game coordinator who you think can be a head coach. So more than anything, I guess it just frustrates me is you have hired a coach that this is their ceiling, where I think offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator, you either need to have a long-time Jim Johnson type or Steve Spagnuolo type, or you need to be looking for the next 39-year-old guy who's only going to be there for 3 years because he's destined to be a head coach in the league. And Eric Bieniemy doesn't fit either one of those criteria.
I think this is, and I'm going to ask the question, and I don't know how viable a question it actually is, but I feel like I need to ask it given the way the season went, particularly on offense, right, for the Kansas City Chiefs. And, you know, Matt Nagy can be he can leave and Bieniemy it's Andy Reid's offense, right? And I'm not going to blame the future first ballot Hall of Fame, maybe greatest of all time quarterback. So the question, and I acknowledge it's going to feel a little weird when it comes out of my mouth to say it. Do you think Andy Reid's lost his fastball?
No, I don't think that. Now, I guess maybe I'm going to hedge my bets here a little bit. The NFL changed, and I think Andy was slow to realize it last year. Think about every team this past season that you think could really make a run. They had the ability to run the football. Kostos, you look at this from a gambling perspective maybe better than anybody. You would never play Isaiah Pacheco this year. You would never bet on Kareem Hunt this year. So I think the burden that they were putting on their quarterback was just too much. Nobody is saying you need Christian McCaffrey or you need Saquon Barkley, but you need to be able to run the ball. You need to have a Travion Henderson. You need to have a Kenneth Walker. You need to have the ability to get under center, turn around and hand the ball off, and trust that you can run the ball 20, 25 times over the course of the game to take the pressure off of your offense. So the fact that the Chiefs never had that ability, I think just severely damaged it. Your play action isn't as dangerous. Your RPOs aren't as dangerous. So that's where I think the Chiefs just lost their way a little bit. 2 years ago, you could win the Super Bowl with Damian Williams as your starting running back. But you're not winning the Super Bowl in 2026 if your team has spent no investment at running back. The league has just shifted. So I am excited this year. Maybe it's because they got Eric Bieniemy. Maybe they were just going to do it anyway. But I do think the Chiefs are just going to be much more invested in trying to run the football this year. Maybe they go get Breece Hall. Maybe they get Jeremiah Love in the first round. Maybe they spend a second or third round pick elsewhere. But if you can't run the ball in 2026, your offense just doesn't work.
And maybe it'll be Kenneth Walker, who you referenced with Seattle. Maybe Kenneth Walker comes over as the running back for the Kansas City Chiefs. Couple more minutes with Carrington Harrison at C.Harrison on Twitter, host of The Drive, 96.5 The Fan in Kansas City. The afternoon drive host. He is sensational, an absolute star. Again, at C.Harrison on Twitter. So my thought, Carrington, and we can kind of wrap up the interview on this note, right? I think it's a logical point here is, I've been thinking basically since the Chiefs got eliminated, right, and that loss to the Chargers, that they're going to be back next year. And Mahomes is going to be back, and maybe the one-score variance went against them too much this year, and maybe just be more average, right? Not what it was 2 years ago, not what it was last year, and they go 11-6 or 12-5 in a really tough division. What's happened here with Nagy and with Bieniemy and some of the stuff, and I think you're on. I don't think you think they're going to be bad. But with Kansas City, it's not, are they going to go 9-8? It's, are they going to win the Super Bowl? How would you describe right now, early in the offseason, your level of optimism in Mahomes, Reid, and the Chiefs getting back to that level that they've been at in past years, right? Maybe back to the top of the mountain next season in 2026?
I would say I feel a lot similar to you, that this year, I call it Meet the Parents syndrome. I love the movie Meet the Parents, but if you think about it, everything went wrong for Greg the entire movie. He burned the altar. He hurt his sister-in-law while they were playing volleyball. He lost the cat. Everything in the 2 hour span went wrong.
That's the funniest scene in the movie, is when he breaks her nose with the volleyball and she starts bleeding, is I think the funniest scene in the movie.
Yeah, but just when you think about it, that's kind of how the Chiefs season was. I mean, basically from the second offensive possession, when Xavier Worthy dislocated his shoulder, just everything that could go wrong last season went wrong. Their left tackle left for a month. He then came back and he got hurt. Their quarterback tore his ACL this past season. Their number one wide receiver was suspended for the first 6 weeks for an off-the-field incident. Like, they just had so many of those things go wrong. So I think it's a combination of that. A lot of things went wrong this past season. You are right when it comes to the one-score variance. The Chiefs were unbelievable 2 years ago. They were maybe the worst team in the league at it this past year. So I do think some of those things kind of move back towards the middle. Now, I know this is a little bit of a cop-out. You got to ask me this question after free agency so I can see what they value. Because the Chiefs usually take a big swing on day one of free agency. They go get a Jawan Taylor. They go get a Tyrann Mathieu. They go get something big on day one. I'm very curious to see what they see as their biggest need and how they address it. Because I would say this offseason, they need two things. We've already talked about the run game. They also need to bolster that pass rush. Chris Jones had 7 sacks this season. George Karlaftis had 6 sacks this season. Think about that. You paid $200 million for your pass rush. If you combine the contracts of Chris Jones and George Karlaftis, for you to get 13 sacks between the two of them is embarrassing. Like, we talk about you can't have a great offense without running the football effectively. You also can't be a great defense if you don't get to the other team's quarterback. Like we just saw Houston. It's not that Houston's defense was so elaborate and exotic. No, we got dogs on the defensive line that are going to get after you. They're going to disrupt everything, and they're going to make the next 60 minutes of you a living hell. Like, that's the kind of defense that I think the Chiefs need to be looking for, at least up front. They got to find their version of Danielle Hunter. You got to find the veteran pass rusher who you overpay a little bit for 2 years, $30 million, a Bosa type that you bring him in and you tell him your one responsibility is to go wreak havoc on the defensive line. So I'm really curious to see what they value in free agency and how they kind of build their team that way leading into the draft.
Can we go lightning round to close if it's okay with you? 10 to 15 seconds per answer. You ready?
Let's do it.
Will Travis Kelce be back next season with the Kansas City Chiefs?
I'm going to go yes. I'm going to go yes because of this news with Eric Bieniemy. I can see him trying to run it back one more time. Bieniemy back, Mahomes back, Kelce back. They run it back.
What would you say the percent chances, Carrington, that Tyreek Hill will be a Kansas City Chiefs? We want to get the whole band back together. That Tyreek Hill will be a Chief in 2026.
0%. 0% for a lot of different reasons. 32 years old, leg injury, off the field issues, his bye in Kansas City, 0%.
All right, 0. I thought it'd be a little more than that. I would definitely trust your opinion on that more than I would trust my own. Now, again, we're way early in the process here. This is a pencil, not pen answer. You can erase it and answer it at any point you want a different way. Next year in the AFC, the Kansas City Chiefs or the field?
Oh, the field, for sure. I mean, just if you think about it, coach is much stronger than it was 3 years ago when the Chiefs started this run. Quarterback is much stronger, and also their division. Now, I'm not making any excuses, but if you look at Josh Allen, like Josh Allen up until this season had a free pass in the division. Brady for 20 years had a free pass in the division. I mean, the quarterbacks in the AFC are going to be, well, we'll see what happens with Bo Nix. You got Bo Nix, Justin Herbert, and the Heisman Trophy winner in the division. So, yeah, I mean, given the fact that they could be a good team, like next year Kansas City could be San Francisco. They could be a 12-win team and not win their division. So, yeah, give me the field in that scenario.
Last one for you here. I've loved the couple of the various movie and TV references you've made. What is the best either movie or television show you have watched recently in 15 or 20 seconds?
Oh, that's a really, really good question. I'm currently rewatching Breaking Bad. I'm in the middle of season 3. I kind of forgot how well written the characters are. Last year, we watched Sopranos for the second time, and I mean, I was a Wire person through and through. The Sopranos is the best show I've ever seen.
Can I give you my Sopranos hot take?
Yeah, of course.
So I love The Sopranos, and I'm from this area, right? I'm married into Italian. I get all of it, right? I love it. It's a great show. It is a great show. I've watched it a couple different times. I tried to watch it last year, and I can't get through it anymore because I hate all the characters. They're really well written. It's very well acted. The show is great. I detest all of them. I feel like they're all evil. And it reaches a point, and I don't know if it's because I'm getting older, I have a kid, I don't know what it is, and I'm not trying to judge you or anyone else that enjoys it. I actually can't sit through and watch it anymore. Is that weird? You think that's acceptable or what?
No, No, it's not weird, but I would say part of the beauty of the show is that it tries to humanize Tony. Like, Tony is an absolute monster at every single phase. But, like, watching him go through therapy and watching him try to unpack his mom, his wife, his relationship with his kids, like, that's the beauty of the show, that, like, we had never seen a show that, like, clearly all the characters are bad people. They kill people. They do all of these things, but they humanize them in such a way and add such levity and comedy to it that just, it makes the show incredible.
Yeah, it's like, Paulie Walnuts gives you like 1 or 2 hysterical one-liners every episode. Also, he like suffocates with a pillow like his mother's best friend growing up. Actually tries to rob her and she catches him in the bedroom. Just like, yeah, it's a heavy show, man. It's great. And so are you, my man. At C.Harrison on Twitter, 96.5 The Fan in Kansas City, afternoon drive host. You're the best. We'll do this again. Thank you very much.
Nick, man, absolutely, man. You know I got all the respect in the world for you, man. You are the best person in the gambling space that brings entertainment and information, man. So I'm really happy to come on your show, man. I appreciate your time today.
Mutual Admiration Society, right back at you, my friend. Carrington Harrison joining us here on You Better You Bet. Okay, a lot to chew on there. We'll take a quick break. We'll come back. We'll talk a little bit more about the Kansas City Chiefs. I have the odds board for next year's college football season. Man, what a great Tuesday in the world of sports. Connor Orr still to come from Sports Illustrated. All my bets will close the show here on this Tuesday on You Better You Bet.
Steps up, delivers downfield, and intercepted! Jamari Sharp makes the pick that will clinch Indiana's first national championship.
Now, back to You Better You Bet with Nick Kostos on Westwood One Sports.
Chris Fowler, Kirk Herbstreit with the call last night on ESPN. The moment Indiana clinched the national championship. Of course, if the Hoosiers really wanted to be champions, those jerks would have covered the spread. I didn't bet the game as far as the side is concerned. I had the total. That extra point that got banked in would have been really, really nice. It had missed. We had ended at 47 as opposed to 48. What can you do? Thanks to our friend Joey Knish for the Charlie Becker prop. Malachi Toney was nice, but yeah, it would have been nice to have hit the under on the game. All my bets for tonight are coming up at the end of the show. And just to say this for the audience, we will have I'm off tomorrow because I love you guys. I can't work every day. I can't do it. So I'm off tomorrow. Thursday, Friday, we're gonna get you set to bet the football weekend championship Sunday in full. We're gonna have great guests. Drew Dinsick's gonna join us. Rob Pizzola's gonna join us. Can't wait for Thursday and Friday coming up this week on You Better You Bet. Let's talk the betting odds for next year's national championship in college football. So I'm just gonna do a refresh of my screen to make sure I have the right numbers. Okay, so here we go. Your co-favorites to win next year's national championship are Ohio State and Notre Dame. And just in case anyone's watching or listening and be like, why are you talking about this now? The season just ended. Yeah, that's why we're talking about it, because it's really fun. And I'm about to give you a pretty strong opinion on what I think is going to happen. So Ohio State and Notre Dame are the co-favorites. Ohio State returns Julian Sayin and Jeremiah Smith. Notre Dame quarterback C.J. Carr will be back. Indiana is the third choice right now, the reigning defending champions. Mendoza goes to the NFL, but Josh Hoover comes in as the quarterback from TCU. Texas with Arch Manning. Cam Coleman comes over from Auburn. Texas plus 750. Oregon with the returning Dante Moore plus 950. Kirby Smart in Georgia 11. Lane Kiffin, Sam Levitt in LSU at 14. A&M 15. Texas Tech at 16. Remember, Texas Tech got Cincinnati quarterback Brendan Sorsby, and he is apparently getting paid an insane amount of money to play at Lubbock this season. Miami at 19. Kalen DeBoer, Keelan Russell, and the Crimson Tide at 22. John Mateer, who's returning to Oklahoma, and Brent Venables at 27. Jaden Mayava, USC at 35 with Lincoln Riley. Michigan is at 40 with Kyle Whittingham as the new coach. If I had to bet this right now, I don't have to, but, what's to stop me? I like Texas. Scary sentence to utter knowing the coach is Steve Sarkisian. Not that Texas can't win 10 games, but do you trust Sark to win a natty? I think this year we might be able to. A lot of really smart NFL draft types, people that grind the all-22, think that if Arch Manning declared this year, like for this NFL draft, he'd be in contention to be the number one pick. And you can hear me say that and disagree with it. Watch me say it and disagree with it. It's not my opinion. It's the opinion of people that know way more about this than me. So if that's true, that means Texas is returning like the likely number one overall pick in next year's NFL draft with an absolute murderer's row around him at the skill positions. Cam Coleman is a monster wide receiver and is going to be a stud catching passes from Arch Manning. 2 stud running backs in the portal for Texas. And obviously we know how much money the Longhorns spend. That is going to be a program to be reckoned with next year. So if you made me pick right now at price, Texas would be my choice plus 750. And my second choice would actually be Kalen DeBoer in Alabama. Ty Simpson declared for the NFL draft, not just because he could be a first-round pick because of the dearth of great quarterback prospects in this cycle. It's also because there is a 5-star freak waiting behind him to play in Keelan Russell. Bama's at 22, Texas at plus 750. My 2 way too early betting looks at next year's national championship in college football. One more break here on this Tuesday edition of the show, and in the final segment, all my bets for tonight in the world of sports, and we'll talk the NFL coaching carousel with Connor Orr from Sports Illustrated.
Now, back to You Better You Bet with Nick Kostos and the crew. Presented by BetMGM on Westwood One Sports.
All right, all my bets for tonight in the NBA and college basketball will wrap up the show. Let's get right to it right now. Joining us here on the show, if you love the NFL the way that I do, and I'm guessing a lot of people in our audience do because the NFL's the best and this is a sports show and the NFL is the best sport in my estimation, then I'm sure you are familiar with the content from our guest at this time, Connor Orr, senior writer for Sports Illustrated covering the National Football League. And if you are not, I would highly recommend you follow Connor on Twitter. Connor with one N, Connor Orr, his work over at SI. You can hear him on Heed the Call with Mark Sessler and Dan Hanzus, which is an Odyssey podcast. He was on the Athletic Football Show podcast last week with Robert Mays. I listened to it. It's great. If you love the NFL, and not that it's only minutia, but I swim in the minutia. And if you like that stuff, then you need to be following Connor. If you like the NFL, you should follow Connor's work. Thanks for joining me, my man. How's it going on this Tuesday?
It's great with an intro like that. You could just keep going. I'll just stand here. This is awesome.
Yeah, I know. No, I'm a fan, so I love having you here on the show. And your work covering all the coaching vacancies has been great. So I'll ask you about a couple of the vacancies that remain open, but I'd love to get your opinion on the two, Connor, that were filled last night, basically during the national championship game or right before it. Let's start here with the Miami Dolphins and Green Bay Packers former defensive coordinator Jeff Hafley. Your opinion on that hire, did it surprise you, etc., Hafley to the Miami Dolphins?
I think once the Dolphins went with John Eric Sullivan as their GM, I think this was probably the most down the middle, down the fairway hire that they could have made because they're resetting the entire operation in Miami. They were so broken from a disjointed personnel and coaching standpoint for years and years and years that they kind of just needed to get two guys on the same page that think alike and that see a team the certain way. Hafley will bring that defense up to a floor that it hasn't had in a long time. And I think just calling him a defensive coach is a little bit of a misnomer. He was a head coach at Boston College, got a lot out of a team that it's really hard to recruit at. I mean, brought Zay Flowers there, got him to stay at Boston College while he was there. So I think Hafley is one of those program guys. I'd initially pegged him for the Giants long before we thought John Harbaugh was going to come here. So I thought it was a really good hire.
I kind of look at it, Connor, and say, I don't know how it's going to go for Jeff Hafley, and I don't think we're going to know how it's going to go until a year or two in. And I'll ask you about Saleh in a second. And what I said earlier in the show is, I think we'll know if Robert Saleh is going to do well in Tennessee this year. If it's a disaster this year, I think we're probably going to know this isn't going to go great. It may take a couple of years before we know what's going to happen with Hafley in Miami. Do you agree with me that this is, in my eyes, it doesn't have to go this way, right? It feels to me like they are at the beginning of what could be a pretty long rebuild with the Dolphins.
Yeah, I mean, I would go as far as to say I think we might know if the Saleh hire is a good hire by the end of this week, depending on who he lands as his offensive coordinator, right? I mean, seriously, you could get Mike McDaniel in there. You could get Clay Kubiak in there. And I don't know, either of those names right now I think are under strong consideration, certainly. And that would be such a field day for Cam Ward. I know that Saleh really likes Cam Ward. And I heard that from a couple of teams in this process that he came in with individualized offensive coordinator plans for every team that he interviewed based on their personnel. They were really impressed with his ability to handle the offensive side of the ball. And I think we can throw out that Jets tenure because it's chaos for everybody. So I think this was a great hire for Tennessee. And like you said, Hafley, this whole roster needs to get pulled up by the roots. And I think McDaniel almost had Brian Dable syndrome where he was too good too early. The team never had to rebuild. And then you ended up stringing it out for far too long.
What is your best guess, and this can be a guess, pencil, not pen, who Robert Saleh's offensive coordinator will be in Tennessee working with Cam Ward?
I would say, again, the short list is probably someone like Mike McDaniel, someone like Clay Kubiak. And let's not forget also that Matt Nagy interviewed for this head coaching job. And it was a couple years ago when the Broncos hired Vic Fangio as their head coach. The runner-up to that job was Mike Munchak. They were both, I think, staying in the same place while the interviews were taking place. And then Elway ended up just hiring both of them to be on the coaching staff. So if they really liked the way that Matt Nagy had a plan for Cam Ward, why not? Because Nagy's contract has expired with the Chiefs. They've already replaced him with Eric Bieniemy. So he is a free agent and able to be hired.
It's something interesting to think about. And just Mike Munchak and Vic Fangio, both great position coaches, and Fangio, one of the great defensive coordinators, maybe not the best consideration to be head coaches in the NFL. So Connor, I'm not surprised that the Buffalo Bills fired Sean. And this doesn't have to be like, are you surprised by it? I actually thought this was a couple years like past due for McDermott to go in Buffalo. I think he'll get another job. We can talk about that. But let's talk about the Buffalo Bills vacancy here, which obviously goes near the top of the list here for the chance to work with Josh Allen. What are you hearing right now? What is your sense as to what Brandon Beane may do now in Buffalo with the next head coach of the Bills?
So here's one interesting name that kind of came on my radar immediately after this happened, and that's Davis Webb, who's the passing game coordinator for the Denver Broncos. Davis Webb is 30. He played with Josh Allen, and he was a hit in Buffalo. They got along really well, has done incredible work with Bo Nix in Denver, and is catching on in a lot of these places. I talked to Cliff Kingsbury about Davis Webb, and he said, if I ever have a son that's playing quarterback, he's only playing for Davis Webb. So a lot of high marks from coaches around the league. And the other name that you're hearing for the Bills coaching search here is Brian Daboll, which is interesting because Davis Webb last played for Brian Daboll. And I think that there is maybe not a coincidence there that maybe Daboll comes in as Webb's veteran OC or some version of the other way around. So I think those are two names that you got to watch early in Buffalo.
Just your opinion. Would you like either of those hires for the Buffalo? And I'm on record saying, like, I don't care who they hire. You need someone different to try and get them over the hump. Just your opinion. Would you like either of those hires for Josh Allen?
I think that ultimately, like, and it's not a direct comp, but how good Aaron Rodgers was when he was in Matt LaFleur's offense, and you finally got him to play in structure and something that made sense for him schematically. Josh Allen needs that, because how many times have we seen him just try to be Superman or need to be Superman? And not that they don't have an offense, but a lot of it just falls away in the fourth quarter and is dependent solely on Josh Allen. So if you could get him into a system that kind of relies on the best and leans on the best of the things that he can do and makes him consistently comfortable, I think we can tap something that we haven't seen in probably the last 5 years that he has of his prime. And you can get a better defensive coordinator, because that's the thing. We keep hiring good offensive coaches over and over and over again. There's just a stacked pool of good defensive coordinators out there that the Bills could hire who could do as good or if not a better job than McDermott. So I actually think this is not one of those jobs where it's impossible to replace him. I think anybody's going to be pretty good. It's a low floor position for sure.
And I think that's just a fascinating sea change this year, where think about the two guys that got hired yesterday, both defensive coaches, and like a lot more defensive coaches potentially on the docket, maybe bucking what's been a long-standing trend of young offensive coaches in the NFL. Connor Orr with us here. You better, you bet. Nick Kostos, Westwood One Sports from Sports Illustrated, on Twitter at his name, at Connor Orr. Will Sean McDermott get a coaching job this offseason in your estimation, Connor? And if so, what do you think the most likely place would be?
So I think the most likely place would make it true that he's not going to get a head coaching job this cycle, right? So immediately when Sean McDermott was let go, I thought, what great news this is for the Arizona Cardinals, who were on the fence about firing Jonathan Gannon. They did, I think in part because they thought there were only going to be a couple vacancies and they'd get a good candidate. And then all of a sudden the carousel blows up. There's 10 openings and you're sitting at the bottom of the totem pole. But I think that should have been their first move, is to call Sean McDermott yesterday. I don't know if Sean McDermott would go there. And I think Sean McDermott's probably best suited to wait a year, sit out, especially since the Titans did not give him the courtesy of bringing him in. There were some Andy Reid connections in that job that he just wasn't able to play at the last minute. So I think McDermott's probably best served sitting out a year, and that's kind of what I expect him to do.
It's wild how things can change over the course of a couple of days in the National Football League. Two of the other big teams with vacancies right now, both in the AFC North, obviously, right? The Pittsburgh Steelers and the Baltimore Ravens. What are you hearing on those two? And I'm on record saying I think Brian Flores should be the head coach of one of those teams. What are you hearing right now as it concerns the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Baltimore Ravens?
So Mike Tomlin told me last year the best head coach, or the best coach without a head coaching job in the NFL, is Brian Flores, and it's not even close. I think if his word matters on the way out, I think Brian Flores gets heavy consideration. I still am interested. Okay, the transfer portal window is closing. Do we at least get a little, do we fly out to South Bend and just see what Marcus Freeman is thinking, give him one more chance to take this job? I just think he was built in a lab to be the Steelers head coach. But if we're looking at short lists here, I would certainly say that you have Flores in Pittsburgh, Chris Shula in Pittsburgh, and maybe an outside shot at Marcus Freeman at Notre Dame. And you're looking at maybe Jesse Minter in Baltimore if I had to put in a pencil guess right now.
And Minter's, I think, is interviewed with every single team that had a vacancy, right? Like, he's the Chargers defensive coordinator who you think will get a job in this cycle?
Yeah, one industry source put it to me this way, right? Like, he's the only one that got a clean sweep on the bingo card, right? So every single team that had a vacancy immediately requested him the moment he became available. That's usually a historical indicator that he's going to walk away with one of these jobs.
I think I know what your answer to this question is going to be, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Is Curt Cignetti going to get a look from any NFL teams here following winning the national championship with Indiana?
I don't think so, but why wouldn't he? Like, and I posted this a couple weeks ago. If you're an NFL team watching him demolish Oregon and Alabama and beating Miami in the national championship game, I would hope at the very least that you are in that building at some point just asking him how on earth he did that in 2 years, because that is the most phenomenal head coaching job, full stop, that I've ever seen in the sport of football. It's unbelievable. That said, there are names like Chandler Whitmer, who's on that staff in Indiana, and Chandler Whitmer's with the Falcons the year before, I believe, as a pass game coordinator. I think we might see a slow creep of some of those Cignetti assistants into the NFL, especially guys who have had NFL ties before, because there's no doubt that people are curious about what's going on there. It's absolutely phenomenal.
Couple more minutes with Connor Rohr from Sports Illustrated. Tom Brady, John Spytek, and the Las Vegas Raiders. Let's take Cignetti out of the equation and say that he's not a candidate. We think they'll draft Mendoza first overall. Where do you think the Raiders are leaning right now?
So I think that there's a couple interesting possibilities for the Raiders. You look at that combo of Davis Webb and Cliff Kingsbury, possibly if he doesn't get the Buffalo job, I think that he might be a potential fit there. You look at Vance Joseph, who they also interviewed, I think, who could be a potential fit there. And you also look, and I've been saying this and I've been thinking it more and more. The Pete Carroll thing was one and done, and Nick Caserio in Houston built the foundation of that roster through 2 one and done hires that you can say whether they were made on purpose or not, they were so bad that they gave them so many bites at the apple at the top half of the draft that it built the foundation of this really good roster. So if you're Tom Brady and you're looking at it and you're saying, okay, my guy isn't out here this year, what's the worst thing that can happen? I'll sign him to a short-term contract like I did with Pete Carroll, fire him again after another year, pick in the top 5 again, and then we'll be ready to roll with a candidate that we really like the next year.
What's Antonio Pierce up to?
Bring it back.
Is David Culley available to come coach the Las Vegas Raiders next year? My last one, unless something else flits into my brain here. I'm going to be honest, man. Now, I'm happy as a Giants fan with the John Harbaugh hire, especially if Todd Monken comes over. I'm going to be absolutely thrilled. I wanted Kevin Stefanski. I know a lot of people, look at his one-loss record. Okay, he was coach of the year twice. The owner brought Deshaun Watson in. I like Stefanski a lot. Retain Jeff Ulbrich, which I think is an absolute no-brainer. Did a great job last year with the Falcons defense. And I don't know if you saw this because it literally came down within the last half hour. The Falcons just named, not Brian, but Bill Callahan, Brian's dad, their offensive line coach. I look at this Falcons staff and that division, and I know it's early. I think they're going to win the NFC South. This is a great coaching staff for Atlanta. You share my optimism for the Falcons?
100%. I mean, I had one coaching source tell me years ago, there is your offensive coordinator hire, there's your defensive coordinator hire, and then it's can you get Bill Callahan to coach the offensive line, right? I mean, those are kind of the order that it goes. He's been one of the most revered position coaches in the NFL, especially at that spot. Maybe him and Jeff Stoutland and the Eagles are the 2 best offensive line coaches in modern NFL history. The way that he's able to take a unit and explain the intricacies of blocking in this numbered system that he has is fascinating. And it hits the ground running. It allows even kind of your worst offensive lineman to catch up really quickly. And so I'm in full agreement with you. That is the best assembled staff in the NFL, new staff in the NFL right now. Now, if Harbaugh can get Monken on board, if he can nail the defensive coordinator hire, I think you're close. But what if the Giants need it all along? They've needed offensive line help. And I think that Callahan was kind of that big free agent on the market that a lot of people were hoping to draw.
I think Anthony Weaver would be my choice if the Giants could get him to be the defensive coordinator. Last one here, hard 30 seconds for the answer. Now, I consume your content. I know who all these guys are. But for our listeners and viewers, give us one name that people don't know that could be a head coach in this cycle in 30 seconds.
Nate Scheelhaus is the passing game coordinator of the Los Angeles Rams, former Illinois quarterback. He was on Matt Campbell's staff at Iowa State and was so good as a running backs coach that they basically named him the heir apparent when Matt Campbell was going to get another Power 5 job. He got plucked by the Rams, and he's been on the fast track ever since. I think he could be a dark horse for this Cleveland job as well.
Yeah, or Grant Udinsky, right, who's the offensive coordinator in Jacksonville to pair with Jim Schwartz. You could tell I know this stuff because I consume Connor's content. At Connor Orr on Twitter, Sports Illustrated, heed the call. Check out his episode on the Athletic podcast. It was great. My friend, great to have you on the show. Hope we get to do this again.
Anytime, Nick. Appreciate it, man.
Connor Orr joining us here on You Better You Bet. A couple minutes to go. Let's get right to the bets. Please, guys, drop the dope-ass beat. Our show sponsor is BetMGM, and BetMGM account holders will receive an Any Sport Parlay Boost token. Score a bigger payout if your wager with the Parlay Boost token hits. Tokens can be used on parlays and same-game parlays. Download the BetMGM app today. We're seeing some movements in the betting market, by the way, on the Denver Broncos for Championship Sunday. That point spread down to 5. I do like the Broncos to cover if I had to bet that game. All right, couple NBA bets and a couple college basketball bets. No Jimmy Butler tonight for the Warriors. He's out for the season. Fallen hero spot. Let's lay Golden State minus 3.5 against the Toronto Raptors. Yesterday, I gave you a winner, fading the LA Clippers with the Washington Wizards. Game 1 without Kawhi Leonard. Tonight, Game 2 without Kawhi Leonard with his most recent ailment. The Chicago Bulls are getting bet in the market. Let's wait and see where this goes. Clippers +4, Clippers +4.5. Give me the LA Clippers to cover in Chicago against the Bulls. Couple college basketball bets for you to wrap. Number 1, UCLA plus the points against Purdue tonight. UCLA coming off a loss this weekend. UCLA with the point guard in Dent who can hang with Braden Smith. UCLA plus the points against Purdue. And Florida coming off a huge win against Vanderbilt this weekend. I want to fade the Florida Gators here and take the points with LSU. 2 leans for me in college hoops. I don't know if I'm going to bet them. It's early in the day. Kansas laying it on the road at Colorado. Kansas is playing really well right now. And St. John's to beat Seton Hall by 20. St. John's a 9.5-point favorite. So the Golden State Warriors and the LA Clippers in the NBA, UCLA and LSU in college hoops. I may bet Kansas and I may bet St. John's as well. And that right there is a tremendous show. Great job by our crew. Black and Abdallah coming up next. I am off tomorrow. Chris Mack has you taken care of here on a Wednesday on You Better You Bet. I'll be back Thursday. Until then, I'm Nick Kostos wishing you minimal sweats, winning bets, the absolute very best of luck. Again, our friends, Black and Abdallah, coming up next on Westwood One Sports.